Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Jujutsu Kaisen. Curse Back, Life Choices, Kaleidoscope of Openings. Chapter 81. Hearing this, Yu was stunned. Yes, in this world of magic, which is full of dangers and can die at any time, it is indeed very heartwarming to get such a promise from a strong man. Thinking of this, he sighed softly and said proudly, "Sister, I reluctantly agree with this brother-in-law." The words just fell. Amaterasu. Raging. The black inflammation instantly engulfed the herpes god. The extremely miserable wailing spread throughout the entire domain, and the source of this sound was the owner of this domain. And as Shalo released Amaterasu, it also automatically broke away from the state of perfect blur. But fortunately, this is inside the domain, so no repulsive force has been felt yet. Amaterasu will not let the herpes god die instantly, so this also gives Shalo time to reopen the perfect virtual state. Shalo calculated that the interval during this period was about 3 seconds. It's not long, but it's not short either under special circumstances. With the last cry of the herpes god, he died completely, and the realm was unlocked, and several people returned to the dark orbit. Oh, herpes was cured so quickly. Shayuji's words stopped abruptly, and the clapping movements of his hands also stopped. While closing his eyes tightly, without any hesitation, he summoned the rainbow dragon. Surrounding him. How did you get in? The account has obviously not been broken yet. Shayuji felt the Shalo beside Mei with a vigilant expression. No wonder the herpes god was solved so quickly. It turned out that this guy had intervened. If it were Mei, it should be able to delay for a long time. Although it was the first time they met, the name Shalo almost made his ears tingle when he heard it. Both Leiho and the others, as well as Gojo Satoru, have mentioned him. However, his current state seems a bit strange. Is he using some special ability to temporarily not be affected by the repulsion? It's unmistakable. If he could take action, he would definitely attack him as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Shayuji felt a little relieved and looked at Shalo with a calm smile. I heard Luahu mention you many times, and now I see that you are indeed well deserved. However, in this state, you shouldn't be able to take action at will, right? Let me guess, it's because of the account restrictions, right? Shalo did not deny it. He is worthy of being the old monster who has been plotting for thousands of years, Kensuo. He noticed his situation so quickly. Unlike the herpes god, the strength of a parasite, like Kensuo, who has lived for thousands of years, is naturally among the top. In addition to his own techniques, he also mastered Shayuji's own techniques. The rainbow dragon surrounding him is the best proof. His Amaterasu is very powerful, but it requires a short backlash to activate. If he cannot kill with one hit, he will be instantly expelled from the tent. Since Mr. Shalo doesn't plan to take action, I will retreat first. Shayuji smiled, bowed slightly, and retreated slowly. At the same time, seeing Shalo not chasing after him, he felt relieved. Yu said in confusion. Since Shalo is inconvenient to take action, why don't we pursue him? Shalo, because you can't beat me. It's not that you can't defeat Shayuji, but that the 1,000-year-old monster living in your body has many tricks on it. This is indeed the case. In the original work, after the two of them were at a disadvantage in a fight with Shayuji, they used Yuyu's teleportation technique to escape abroad. However, now that he has intervened, these things will naturally not happen. In this case, I have no choice but to look for the cursed spirits elsewhere and get some gold coins from behind them. Do you want to come with me, Shalo-jun? Mei put away her battle axe and winked at Shalo. Shalo shook his head. No, Fushiguro Megumi may need my help. After saying that, the whirlpool appeared and the summer flow disappeared. Looking at Shalo disappearing into the whirlpool, Mei sighed in despair. Let's go, Yu, let's go to a place where there are many cursed spirits. Sister, we are already rich, why do we still have to work so hard to defeat the cursed spirit? Mei, in the past, I didn't like money that much, I just enjoyed the process of making money, but now I have a new goal. That is, make enough money to support Shalo. 22:01 minutes. Shibuya neighborhood. Bang bang bang. The punches and blows to the flesh continued, and strong winds blew around, sending garbage flying in the streets. After a muffled roar, Itadori and Fushiguro Megumi stepped back at the same time. Liang shook his numb arms and looked at the little old man in front of him who was wearing a white vest and grinning with great depression. Itadori gasped. This little old man is really resistant to fighting. Even if it is a full blow, it will not hurt or itch him. Fushiguro Megumi nodded. Both he and Itadori have made great progress during this period of time. Especially the strength, speed, and spell control have been greatly improved. But even so, the attacks of the two men were unable to cause an effective attack on the curse master in front. Apart from the damaged clothes, there wasn't even a scratch on the other party's body. This was so weird. Not bad, I actually met two talented conjurers. Worth killing. The little old man jumped down from a high place, his eyes filled with crazy murderous intent. I still don't believe in this evil. Itadori gritted his teeth and was about to step forward to fight again but was pulled back by Fushiguro. Fushiguro, why are you stopping me? We have to deal with this old man as soon as possible. Ino-senpai hasn't come yet, something must have happened. Fushiguro Megumi said solemnly, I probably understand the opponent's technique. Itadori, please cooperate with me. After saying that, Fushiguro Megumi made the rabbit handprint. 10 shadow techniques. Take off the rabbit. Suddenly a jumping little white rabbit appeared at the little old man's feet, blinking at him. Huh, I thought it was so awesome, but it turned out to be a bluff. Boom. Before he finished speaking, rabbit rain fell from the sky, and he was instantly engulfed in it. Shibuya Tower. Ino put on a black hood and transformed into a terrorist. He looked at the two people in front of him with a solemn expression. Although I don't know what the old woman opposite is doing, it's definitely not a good thing to have her grandson desperately protecting her. We still don't know what the situation is at Itadori, so we must resolve it quickly. I can never live up to Nanami's expectations of me. Then, right now, kneeling on the ground, clasping her hands, the tail god Granny suddenly opened her turbid eyes with the power of the spell all over her body. That's enough, dear grandson. Hearing this, the yellow-haired man nodded and returned to her side. Remember, don't resist, and don't be corrupted by the dead. After we finish this job, we will go back to the countryside to enjoy ourselves. Understood, Grandma. Then, the yellow-haired man took out a glass bottle from his pocket. What is contained inside is the bones of heaven and the tyrant, Fuhei Shear. Following the obscure incantation of the tail goddess, the yellow-haired man took a deep breath and swallowed the bones and the glass bottle into his belly. The Zen garden is very special, please come quickly. The old voice of Granny Tegami sounded. The yellow-haired man's body twisted strangely, and black gas continued to emit from his body. Boom, he gently raised his hand to catch the attack from the wild boar. How do you feel, dear grandson? Chanyuan Shear moved his shoulders twice and made a crackling sound. Not bad, better than ever. But who do you call your good grandson? After saying that, he looked back sideways, revealing a domineering and evil smile that only belongs to tyrants. You. The tail god's mother-in-law's pupils shrank sharply, and she looked at Fuhei Shear's face in disbelief. She knew that her grandson would never come back. Fuhei Shear did not immediately pay attention to the old woman behind him, but looked at Zuya ahead. He opened his arms, took a greedy breath, and said with great enjoyment, Ah, is this the world more than 10 years from now? The demons are starting to dance in Shibuya too. There are so many powerful auras that I don't want to go back. Are you right, conjurer? Fuhei Shear grinned evilly, looking towards the pig field like a beast gazing at its prey. This scene immediately made Ino across from him break out in cold sweat, and even breathing became difficult. His appearance has completely changed. Who is this man in front of me? Even if the opponent doesn't have any magic power on him, being stared at by him like this can even feel like being stared at by death. And judging from his standing posture, he is simply terrifyingly strong. Must go all out. After just a moment's hesitation, Ino immediately gathered the magic spirit in his hand and prepared to launch the strongest attack. However, whoosh, a gust of night wind blew, and Fuhei Shear's figure actually disappeared. The next moment, Ino's black hood was taken off at some point. Ino is shocked. How? How is it possible? There is no trace of using magic power, that is to say. The other party did it entirely by virtue of his physical strength. How powerful is one's body to be able to do this? Soon, Ino felt his body light up, the collar on his chest tightened, and then his whole body was lifted up like a chicken. Even after more than 10 years, you magicians are still so weak. The Zen Yuan was so angry that he raised his fist as big as a sandbag and was about to hit Zuya on the face. Just then, a flash of light appeared. Fuhashir's fist fell into space. But Inoue still teleported 50 meters in front of him, and the person holding his collar was none other than Shalo. You are Natsuliu. I recognize you. Itadori and the others showed me my photos of you. Thank you for your help. Shalo looked at Fuhashir in front of him. No need to thank me, I'm here to find him. That's so fast. Are you also a magician? Fuhashir came to the two of them in an instant and looked at Shalo with interest. Shalo also silently swept over Shir. This is the tyrant Fushiguro who assassinated Gojo Satoru when he was a junior college student. The feeling of oppression is stronger than imagined. But this is not surprising. He killed Gojo Satoru once when he was a junior college student, and he also used physical skills to kill Tuogen directly in Tuogen's domain. Although the process is blessed by the special cursed tool Yuyun, it does not affect its gold content at all. There is no doubt about the strength of Heaven and Tyrant. Shalo looked at Shir's completely dark pupils, which were obviously reincarnated by the tail goddess Granny. Shibuya Grand Stage, I'll do it no matter what, I'm talking about you. Shalo looked at Shir and joked. Although I don't know what Shalo means. But Shir still stretched out his little finger, took out his ears and said calmly, I was pulled back to this world by an inexplicable force. Fight with me. I think you are quite powerful. I haven't moved my muscles and bones for a long time and my whole body is itchy. Shalo smiled calmly. Okay, then I will help you loosen your bones. Ino. Hey, wait, are you sure? This man is so powerful that I can't even catch his speed. Shalo waved his hand and told Zuyi to step aside. Junner smiled disdainfully, and in a flash, he came behind Shalo and punched him neatly. Boom. The two fists collided, and Shalo and Fuhashir each took a few steps back. Not bad, I can actually react. Fuhashir stopped just halfway through what he said. I saw green flames attached to the surface of Sha fluid, and the whole body exuded terrifying pressure. Shalo directly opened the fifth gate of the 8 gates of Dunjia, Duman. What a powerful aura! Fuhashir became even more excited when he saw this, with a strong fighting spirit flashing in his turbid and dark eyes. Two figures flashed past and collided at extremely fast speeds. Bang bang bang. Under night. From the wild boar's perspective, two elusive afterimages kept flashing and moving, sometimes separating, sometimes colliding again. He was swaying across the high tower, and the strong wind swept around him, blowing his hair and flying. So strong. I had always heard Itadori say that Shalo was very strong, but he had never had a concrete idea in his mind. But for now, Shalo didn't even use the spell, but he was able to fight back and forth with that man. There were even vague signs of suppression. I was almost close to the strength of a first-level conjurer, but I couldn't capture the movement of the two people at all, and I could only barely see the afterimages. This is just a battle between physical skills, but it has reached a super level. Far away, Shalo grinned and felt the blood boiling all over his body. After fusing Hashirama's cells, his body was greatly strengthened. Now that Duman is opened, there is no other pain except the burning sensation, and the internal organs can completely bear it. In this case, Jingman, open. Boom. As the 6th gate of the 8-gate Dunjia opened, the aura around Shalo surged again, and the terrifying air current continued to rise. Shalo took a step forward, his body was like a rainbow, leaving blue air waves wherever he passed. Boom. A punch hit Fuhashir's arms so fast that Fuhashir almost didn't even react. What? Unprepared, Fuhashir felt that what hit him was not a fist, but a heavy mountain. He groaned, staggered back a few steps, and shook his numb arms. It's interesting. I actually lost in a physical battle for the first time. It seems that I have to show some real skills. Fuhashir grinned evilly and shouted excitedly, keep going. Meanwhile, the blocks below the tower. Itadori and Fushiguro Megumi have seen through the weirdness of the little old man's technique, and they work together to attack. The little old man put his arms in front of his chest and smiled secretly in his heart. Very good, attack me with all your strength. My technique is reversal. The stronger the attack hits me, the weaker the power will be. The more energetic you are, the less likely you are to defeat me. When your strength runs out, you will die. When Fushiguro held the cursed tool sword and slashed at the old man's body with all his strength. Sparks filled the sky, but it only scratched a little of the opponent's skin. But he was not discouraged, and shouted to Itadori beside him, "Now, quickly." Itadori nodded and punched out suddenly, but at the last moment it stopped in the little old man's abdomen, and the little old man's fist hit Itadori's body. Boom! There was a muffled sound, and the little old man grinned proudly and said, "Ginger must be old and spicy, you can't break my defense. It's better to wait for death." Itadori sneered. Really? Fushiguro's previous plan quickly flashed through his mind. As long as you hit the opponent with strong power and just the right weak attack at the same time, you can cause damage to him. And let him think that both of us will attack him with all our strength as before. And now is the best time. Boom! The fist stopped in front of the opponent's abdomen, suddenly exerted force. The force was not strong, but it was just enough to break the opponent's spell. Puff! The little old man spat out a mouthful of blood, and his pupils suddenly shrank. How is it possible? He actually paused for a beat before launching the attack. Just now, he did it on purpose. Was my technique seen through? Then, Itadori and Fushiguro attacked the little old man continuously. The little old man was beaten until he vomited blood and his teeth were shattered. The technique was suddenly broken, which made it difficult for him to adapt. The fists of the two people kept falling on him, making him dizzy. Roll! The little old cursor roared and unleashed a powerful wave of curse power, forcing Itadori and the two back. You two have completely pissed me off. Sudden. A figure fell like a cannonball. Boom! The road in the neighborhood was smashed, leaving a huge dent. Ahem! Fuhashir slowly climbed up from the pit, holding his chest. A dagger flew to Fuhei's side, and Shalo took the dagger and arrived instantly. Shaliu! Itadori and Fushiguro would exclaim at the same time. Ever since Gojo Satoru was sealed, Shalo has been the entire high school's last trump card. You two did a great job. He could clearly detect that the curtains on the 5th floor were loose, presumably because they had destroyed many formations. Shalo looked at the display at the stunned little old man on the side, and then looked at the array eyes nailed to the ground behind him. The little old man saw Shalo approaching. Want to break the formation? Don't even think about it. Amaterasu. Raging. Black flames instantly covered the old man's body, and after several screams, the little old man died completely. Shalo was too lazy to beep with him. Click. Shalo exerted a little force, and the formation eye in his palm was instantly shattered. The 5th level account also dissipated. In this way, only the last layer of the core account is left, which is where the fake Shayuji and Prison Gate Zhong are located. After doing all this, Shalo looked at Fuhashir again. He is worthy of being a strong man with a heavenly and restrained physique when he opens the Jingmun. It turned out that he only suffered some internal injuries. However, at this moment, Fuhashir no longer had the will to fight. First of all, this body is too weak and cannot display his full strength. In this state, he cannot defeat Shalo. Secondly, there is the boy next to Shalo who looks exactly like him. He slowly raised his hand and pointed at Fushiguro Megumi. What's his name? Shalo raised his eyebrows slightly. He actually recognized it so quickly. Sure enough, the Shibuya incident was a large-scale family recognition scene. That's right, Fuhashir was the only one who cared about his son very much. Shalo glanced at Itadori again. It would be his turn to recognize his bride soon. As the latter, Itadori scratched his head in confusion, with a very confused expression. If you guessed correctly, the man opposite should be an enemy, right? Why do you feel like something is wrong with the atmosphere now? Shalo came to Fuhashir and smiled. Can't you recognize your son? Hearing this, Fuhei's tiger body trembled. Sure enough, he did not admit his mistake. He looked at Shalo, and many questions arose in his mind. Shalo spread his hands. Don't look at me, it was Gojo Satoru who took him in. In response to this, Fuhashir laughed at himself. Unexpectedly, Gojo Satoru, who he had assassinated for money, actually agreed to his request and adopted his only son. It seems that the education is quite good. Compared with it, I feel really ashamed. He stared intently at the cold-faced Fushiguro Megumi in the distance, and images of Fushiguro as a baby flashed through his mind. After a long time, he sighed and whispered to Shalo, "Don't tell him my identity." As a result, he was no longer interested in the Shibuya brawl. Now he must know the most important thing. Thinking of this, Fuhei Shire's expression pretended to be indifferent, and he casually pointed at Fuhei and said, "Boy, what's your last name?" Itadori pointed at himself, a little unsure, and said, "Me." Fushiguro Megumi on the side said calmly, "Fushiguro." Hearing this, the corners of Fuhei Shire's mouth slightly raised, and his heart felt extremely happy. It would be better if the surname is not Zenuan. Then, he slowly raised his left hand holding the knife, under the extremely shocked eyes of several people. Without hesitation, he stabbed his own temple. PFF'd. Blood splatters. Fuhei Shire showed a relieved smile, closed his eyes with satisfaction, and slowly fell to the ground. What's going on? Is he suicide? Itadori opened his mouth wide and looked in disbelief at the man whose appearance changed drastically after he fell to the ground. Fushigiro's black hair turned into yellow hair, and his appearance completely changed. Could it be that this is the true nature of this body? Then what just happened was, Fushiguro Megumi was also shocked by this scene. He observed very carefully, from the moment the other party fell to the ground. His eyes never left his side. And just now, because of his simple answer, he actually committed suicide with a knife with a relieved smile. Fushiguro Megumi became increasingly confused. Shalo did not prevent Fuhei Shire from committing suicide. First of all, this is not his body. Secondly, Riko Tenai, the Hoshirjong body, was killed by one shot, and Shalo didn't like him very much. But if I remember correctly, there was a bone inside this corpse, right? Without saying anything, Shalo picked up the dagger and slashed his stomach. After some rummaging, I soon found a small glass bottle, which contained the bones of Fuhei Shire. He now possesses the Samsara Eye and can perform the reincarnation of Evil Land. Maybe he can be summoned to work for him in the future. I am really a living hell. At this time, Fushiguro Megumi walked over with an extremely complicated expression. Shalo, he is. Oh, he is your father who has been dead for many years. Shalo did not hide anything. As for Fuhei Shire's request that he not reveal his identity just now, it had long been forgotten. What? As soon as these words came out, it was like a bolt from the blue. Fushiguro Megumi's eyes suddenly widened. He almost lost his balance. This guy is the biological father who sold me into the Zenuan family. Thinking of this, Fushiguro Megumi clenched his fists and stared at the blood-stained sword that Shire used to commit suicide just now. So, he doesn't dare to face me. Coward. Tears dripped down his cheeks. After letting Itadori comfort Fushiguro, Natsuliu left alone. Just now, the memory returned by the clone surprised him. The three special ones, Makoto, Rokuro, and Togen, as well as Nanami Meimei, all gathered at the main street entrance of Shibuya Station. This is completely inconsistent with the original plot. I didn't expect that such a big change would occur because of my intervention. But then I thought about it. It's good to have all the special level curse spirits gathered together, which saves me a lot of trouble. Ever since I obtained these Samsara Eyes, I have never used their abilities. As a result, the progress of the Shibuya incident has accelerated, and Sunuo should be on the stage soon. At the same time, 22:20 minutes, Shibuya Station Main Street exit. A battle between a magician and 3 super-level magic spirits has been going on for a long time. The battlefield is divided into 3 areas. Strong fluctuations in spell power echoed endlessly throughout the street. The salty sea water flooded the surrounding buildings, and the raging fire burned the earth black. The ground cracked and the entire bustling neighborhood was devastated. Without Fuhei Shire's intervention, Tuogen did not die. On the other hand, Nanami, who was pulled into the realm of Expand, Dangyunping Line, was directly connected to the Zen Temple. Although Maki and the 3 escaped from the desperate situation. However, each of the 3 of them was injured, and the one who entered the monastery even lost an arm. Obviously, even if he has the projection spell that can divide 1 second into 24 equal parts, he cannot avoid the sure hit effect in the field. Thinking of this, the person directly next to the Zen Academy laughed at himself, is this the gap? Even 24 frames per second can't avoid the sure hit effect of the field. This time, Zenuan Zibiru clearly understood the difference between the first level and the special level. No, to be precise, there is a huge gap between having a field and not having a field. Nanami's shirt was torn, revealing her traumatized body. He waved the cursed tool in his hand with difficulty, constantly killing the cursed spirits surrounding him. Previously, the attack in Tuo Gen's domain had a great impact on him. Therefore, even though he is exhausted, it will be so difficult for him to deal with these miscellaneous fish spirits. When the spear was swung like a dragon and snake, deftly deflecting Tuo Gen's blow. Maki, who had once again blocked a fatal blow, thrust her spear into the ground, struggled to hold herself up, and breathed in the air greedily. Because she was born without magic power and could not be selected in the field, her injuries were not serious. But the opponent she faces now is Tuo Gen, one of the natural disasters that can bring her death at any time. Even if she activates the 8 gates of Dunjia, she cannot make up for the huge gap in strength in a short period of time. But if she really had to, she could only disobey Shalu's reminder and forcefully open the next few doors. On the other side of the battlefield, Mei Mei used Yuyu's teleportation technique to escape death from Luohu many times. Whether it was flames or the incredibly fast speed, the opponent brought a huge sense of oppression to her. It can be said that Liuhu is the strongest existence among the 4 major natural disasters. Only at this moment did all the experts understand the terrifying power of the natural disaster level curse spirit. At the same time, I couldn't help but sigh at the horror of Shalu, who actually single-handedly suppressed 3 natural disasters at the exchange meeting. Far away, Itadori gathered his strength and sent a car flying into the air, slamming it into the real person who was in extremely poor condition in front of him. Just as the real person was about to escape, suddenly a piercing pain came from the depths of his soul. Poof! A mouthful of blood spurted out, and his chest was instantly pierced by a nail with magical power. It's that wild woman playing with a hammer again. My clone and I were actually restrained by her. She must be killed and turned into an artificial cursed spirit that can only hammer nails. Not far away, Kugisaki Rose gestured towards Itadori with one hand on her hip. Then she raised the hammer and looked at the real clone. Oh, is this the special clone? How come I can't even defeat a 3rd-level conjurer? Which one is more exciting, my resonance or my hairpin? Itadori shouted at her. Kugisaki, let's fight quickly. Things are not going well over there with Nanami and Mei Mei sensei. Shalu should be able to break in soon. Just before, Itadori and Fushiguro, who came to support, met Natsumi, who was blocked from the outside world. This area is still within the edge of the last layer of tents. But the last formation eye has yet to be found. Suddenly, the real person grinned. He gave up the fight with Itadori and turned around and ran towards the other side. Itadori looked in the direction where Masato was escaping, and his pupils suddenly widened. Nanami. His target is Nanami. Without any hesitation, Itadori chased after him like crazy. This guy called Genrin has killed or transformed countless humans. Now, he still wants to attack Nanami. I will get rid of him no matter what. Nanami, watch out. At this moment, Nanami is dragging her heavily injured body, like a god of war, fighting in a bloody battle among the cursed spirits. All that came to my ears was the wail of the cursed spirit and the splatter of blood. The distance was too far, and because of the soundproof glass, he didn't hear Itadori's shouts. Finally, with the head of the last cursed spirit being chopped off, Nanami eliminated all the cursed spirits in the subway station. At this moment, he was almost running out of strength to hold the knife. Looking at the pile of cursed spirit corpses on the ground, and then looking at the watch on his wrist, he said weakly, working overtime is really annoying. Just when he wanted to sit down and rest for a while. Suddenly, a pair of hands suddenly placed on his back. At this time, Itadori also rushed over. Seeing the scene in front of him, Itadori was completely panicked. The real person put a finger in front of his mouth and whispered, "Shish, don't move. Just go and die, otherwise, the dear student behind you will also die." Demonic whispers echoed in the extremely quiet subway station. Then, the real person showed a playful evil smile, looked at Itadori at the corner behind him, and made a gesture of wiping his neck. But the only thing that made him unhappy was that he couldn't smell fear from Nanami. On the contrary, you can feel the emotion of relaxation and relief. Isn't this magician afraid of death? Doesn't he have the slightest fear of death? Nanami slowly raised her head and breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that his life was short. In a daze, he seemed to see his old friend Hyuan smiling at him. Hee. Nanami tilted her head slightly and smiled calmly. Itadori-san, I'll leave the rest to you. Go help the others. After speaking, he closed his heavy eyelids tiredly. What is in front of us is not darkness, but a beach as beautiful as an illusion. The clear ocean reflects the warm sunshine. This is the place he longs for, Malaysia. A breeze blew by, and Nanami opened her arms to welcome the baptism of the sea breeze. This moment, the originally pungent and unpleasant smell of blood turned into a refreshing and comfortable sea breeze. The real person's cold hands behind his back seemed to have turned into a mother's gentle touch. Time is like waves rushing across the beach, leaving only a faint trace. Gentle memories sound like strings in the ears, and past memories flash past like countless memory cards. Tired. No more overtime work. This time, I want to give myself a long vacation. The deadline is, forever. The memory cards flashed by quickly. Finally, it was settled in the beautiful Malaysia. Sudden, a beam of light shone in, and Nanami slowly opened her eyes. Then, there was a clicking sound in my ears. The last layer of tent is broken. Let you cast a spell, it will either blow or rain. A voice echoed throughout the Shibuya Station neighborhood. This voice is Shalo. Everyone in the high school breathed a sigh of relief and looked happy. He is Shalo. How did this young boy get out of his trap? The person standing directly next to the monastery was covering his broken arm and staring blankly at the curtains scattered into debris in the sky. Maki, is this the person you said I can't even compare to with a finger? He looks younger than my son Zenin Naoya. A smile appeared on the corner of Maki's lips beside him. That's right, you can't compare to him with one finger. Zenyuan Naoya is even more unworthy. People directly adjacent to the Zenyuan, Sha Yuji, who was hiding in the dark, opened his eyes, and the eye formation stone in his hand also turned into powder as the curtains shattered. Amazing, to be able to directly break through the last layer of the tent that I carefully set up in such a brutal way. He looked at the prison gate next to him and fell into deep thought. Now, he can be sure. Shalo is the variable he deduced. It seems that the plan of the Millennium Plan has to be changed. At the same time, the real person's face changed drastically. It's Shalo. He put away his playful attitude, and the inaction transformation in his hand was about to start working. A huge force suddenly came from the abdomen, accompanied by severe pain that swept through the whole body, and the real person was directly blasted out. Shalo patted Nanami on the shoulder and said with a smile, Malaysia is beautiful in fantasy, but it would be more appropriate to experience it in person. How? How do you know? Nanami looked weak and said weakly. He has always wanted to go to Malaysia, but he has never revealed it to anyone else. You just said it from your own mouth. Hearing this, Nanami sighed and sighed in her heart. It turns out that it was like this. It seemed that my obsession was too strong, and I actually muttered it to myself when I was dying. It's embarrassing in front of the juniors. But Shalo is right, it is better to experience it while alive. Thinking of it, he thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Thank you. It's a small thing, just buy me a ticket when the time comes. At this time, Itadori suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, Kugisaki, don't let that beast get away. Don't worry, no curse spirit can escape from my hands yet. Outside the street, Kugisaki slowly raised his right hand and made a gesture of snapping his fingers. You have destroyed so many lives and still want to escape. Have you ever asked me about the cuddling spell? Hairpin. Following Kugisaki Wild Rose's sharp shout, she snapped her fingers. The nails that had been driven into the body of the real person suddenly exploded. The damage caused by the explosion directly affects the body's soul. The clone of the real person who was about to return to his true body staggered, while the real person who escaped spewed out a mouthful of blood again. Feeling the severe pain coming from the depths of his soul, the real person looked ferocious and stared at the Kugisaki Wild Rose chasing after him. It's this wild woman who keeps influencing me by attacking my clones. Otherwise Itadori would have been captured by him. Thinking of this, the real person grinned evilly and had a plan in mind. Since you like chasing after my clone so much, then be prepared to die miserably. He suddenly changed direction and took the initiative to run towards Kugisaki Wild Rose. During this period, the real person and the clone continued to cross and change places. Kugisaki Wild Rose, who was chasing after her, was confused for a while as to which one was the main body and which one was the clone. After all, the clone of the real person is almost the same as the original body except that it cannot use the abilities of the original body. Seeing this scene, Shalubin's mouth twitched. Why did you go back to that scene in the original work? Is it possible that the world of magic still has the function of modifying fate? Thinking of this, Shalu shook his head. It doesn't matter whether your destiny is corrected or not, it doesn't matter, I will take action. Sure enough, Mahito suddenly controlled his clones to surround Kugisaki Rose one after another, and at the same time opened his palms to grab Kugisaki Rose's head. Caught in the middle, Kugisaki Wild Rose's heart tightened. Which one is his true identity? Is this guy playing a spot the difference game with me? But the two are so similar that they cannot be distinguished in a short time. The sense of crisis of death came to my mind. She had witnessed the real person's technique before. Just touch ordinary people with your hands, and they can be transformed into magic spirits or expand and explode rapidly. Once you guess wrong, you will definitely end up miserable. In just a short moment, Kugisaki Wild Rose thought a lot. Finally, what Shalu said to him in the room of the building in Roppongi came to mind. Did his tragic fate happen in this scene? No matter what, just choose a side. Kugisaki Wild Rose chose to avoid the real person attacking from the right. Itadori looked shocked and suddenly shouted, Kugisaki. The one on the left is his true body, don't be touched by him. Itadori, who is obsessed with authority and is a clear observer, naturally recognizes the real person after careful observation. The real person smiled solemnly, it's too late. So what if Shalu comes? I just want to kill your high school students in front of you. The inaction transformation was activated in advance in the palm of his hand, and it would kill her the moment she touched it. Hearing Itadori's reminder, Kugisaki Wild Rose suddenly turned around to avoid, but her pupils shrank sharply. It's too late. The real person has a crazy grin on his face, and his 5 fingers turn into claws, only a few centimeters away from his face. At the critical moment, all things are attracted by heaven. The real person's movements stagnated, and the body that had originally pounced on Kugisaki Wild Rose suddenly retreated uncontrollably. A powerful mysterious attraction came from behind, as if a pair of invisible big hands were strangling the back of his neck. The real person's face changed drastically. What's going on? What is this sudden gravitational force? When he looked back, he understood. It's Shalu again. What kind of ability is this? Even though they are so far apart, they can still absorb themselves. Naturally, he wouldn't just sit back and wait for death. In the process of going backwards, he kept trying to change his body. Make it expand and increase its weight. Trying to use this to resist the absorption force coming from Shalu's palm. But no matter what he did, he couldn't change the ending that was getting closer and closer to Shalu. His body was moving backwards uncontrollably. It crashed through several thick walls along the way, and finally came under Shalu's deliberate control. The real person's face was on the ground, rubbing against him all the way in an extremely humiliating posture. This is just because Shalu deliberately controlled the strength of gravity, otherwise it would only take a moment to attract the real person. There is no need for any sympathy for Lezzie, just torture slowly. Togen, save me. The real person was completely panicked. No matter how he changed his form, he couldn't get rid of this strange gravity. He finally saw that the other party was completely torturing him. Whenever you increase your resistance and are about to break away from gravity, the opponent also increases the intensity of gravity's absorption. There is no way for me to escape from these invisible hands. Seeing this scene, Itadori fell to his knees and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Shalu was there, otherwise Kugisaki Wild Rose might have encountered something unexpected. On the street, Nailazaki Wild Rose was stunned in place. Her hair was a little messy at the moment, and the hand holding the hammer was shaking slightly. Almost. Just a hair's breadth. The sickle of death will cut through his own neck. Then looking at the horrified expression on the real person's face, she smiled. Did he save me again? Real person. Boom. Toji roared in the distance and threw several cars at Shalo. Seeing several cars hitting him, Shalo calmly raised his other hand. Shinra Tenzhang. Then Shalo's words fell. Boom. A strong repulsive force spread out around him. Several cars that were about to hit him were instantly bounced away like plastic toys, and they were thrown back at the instigator Tuo Gen. Upon seeing this, Tuo Gen immediately activated his technique and summoned an army of dead soldiers. Suddenly, countless strange-looking ancient fishes broke through the water curtain, opened their bloody mouths and rushed towards Shalo. At the same time, the largest one swallowed the real person into its belly and fled into the distance. Shalo opened his arms slightly, and the terrifying repulsive force burst out instantly, smashing all the oncoming strange fish to pieces in an instant. The army surged to pieces and collapsed in an instant. But because there were many experts around, Shalo did not use all his strength. Otherwise, most of Shibuya will be bulldozed. Thinking of this, Shalo ignored the escaping Genrin and Tuo Gen, because the entire Shibuya was within the scope of his Flying Thunder God's mark. No matter how fast they run, can they run faster than the Flying Thunder God? He said to the high commissioners behind him. Ahem, I suggest you stay away a little bit. The range of my spell may be a little wider later. Hearing this, everyone was a little puzzled. The person directly next to the Zen Yuan covered his broken arm and asked doubtfully, didn't we hide far enough? It's a few hundred meters away, right? No matter how big the aftermath of your spell is, can it still hurt us? Hey, old man from the Chanyuan family, don't talk so much. At that time, if an old man with a broken arm who loves to drink dies due to the aftermath of his own magic, it will be a big shame. Kugizuki Wild Rose had a wicked smile on her face and meant something. She could clearly feel from Shalo's tone that if she was too close to him, she might become a burden to him. And Shalo's words were already very tactful. The person directly next to the Zen Yuan had veins popping up on his forehead, and he suppressed his anger. Mei. Are all your current generation of spellmasters so crazy? You don't know anything about respecting the old and loving the young. Mei ignored him, but stared closely at Shalo's pair of mysterious pupils full of lines and purple light. If she remembered correctly, Shalo's two pairs of pupils were scarlet before, but now one of them has turned purple. No need to think about it, this guy must have figured out some incredible magic. Listen to Shalo. Not only will we not be of much help here, we will become a burden. I agree. Teacher Mei is right. The cursed spirits are rampant in Shibuya and it has become a hell on earth. Let's spread out our operations and take out the surviving ordinary people as much as possible. Having said this, Nanami pointed to the tallest tower in Shibuya and continued. Afterwards, everyone gathered in that high tower. Shalo nodded. In this way, he could free up his hands and feet to do something big. Before leaving, Itadori looked at Natsuliu and asked, Natsuliu, please be sure to bring back teacher Gojo Satoru. Also, you must kill that fool. After saying that, Itadori ran towards the station, and the rest of the high school students also rushed in other directions. Natsuliu's Sharingan turned and silently looked at the direction in which Itadori left. It was discovered that there was a drop of blood mark on the collar behind him. If you guessed it correctly, it should be a method used by Zhongshang who possesses the red blood manipulation technique to hunt down prey. Therefore, Itadori is likely to have a big fight with his brother as in the original work. He had no intention of intervening in this large-scale brother recognition scene. After all, Itadori's life will not be in danger, but he will get a bodyguard and a brother who will die for him without hesitation. Speaking of the red blood technique, it is a technique that condenses one's own blood to launch an attack. At least it is very flexible and powerful in the hands of the expansion phase. But if the user has AIDS, the power of this technique will cut off the lone space comparable to Sunuo. Shalo shook his head and put aside the strange thoughts in his mind. Look in the direction where the real Tuo Gen escaped. Bashu returns to the battle, let's begin. Whoosh. The summer stream disappeared instantly, leaving only a yellow lightning streaking across the sky. At the same time, inside the subway station, Itadori walked alone inside the subway station and began to look for surviving humans. The real person and the special level curse spirit named Tuojen should not be able to escape Shalu's clutches. And the volcanic head that seemed to be the strongest disappeared without a trace the moment it saw Shalu break the tent. But now, he also has the strength to deal with level 1, so he should not be in danger. So, do your best to save people. However, at this moment, Itadori suddenly became alarmed. Whoosh! A blood arrow shot out with blood compressed into an arrow. Itadori didn't hesitate at all, he rolled and narrowly avoided the attack. Looking back, I saw a tall man with 2 tall hemp flowers on his head and thick dark circles walking out of the darkness at the corner behind him. Are you a cursor? Itadori is a little confused. Shouldn't the curse masters be all outside Shibuya? However, the technique he uses seems to be very similar to that of Aimo-senpai. Could it be that he is a magician from the Aimo family? The expression on Zhang Zhang's face was extremely cold, and the murderous intent almost overflowed from his body. Without saying anything, he raised his hand and fired a few more bloody arrows. Itadori knows very well that once he is hit by these blood arrows, his life will be in danger. The opponent's technique is to remotely control blood to attack himself. So if you want to win against him, you must find a way to close the distance and make full use of your advantage in close combat. Thinking of this, Itadori no longer just avoids attacks, but uses various buildings in the subway station to avoid attacks while constantly getting closer to the expansion. Itadori grabbed the backswing of the blood arrow shot by the swollen phase, and suddenly struck with a black flashing punch. The blood arrow pierced Itadori's palm, and Itadori's other fist also hit Dao Zhang's face. The two of them took a few steps back at the same time. The Prime Minister looked at Itadori, who was covering his wrists, with a surprised look on his face. Sure enough, with some strength, no wonder he was able to kill my 2 younger brothers. Thinking of this, the killing intent in his eyes almost turned into reality. Before I kill you, I have something to ask you. What last words could my 2 brothers leave behind before they die? Your brother. Itadori was a little confused by the strange question suddenly asked by the enemy in front of him. Did he come here for revenge? When did he kill his brother? Tisk. Zhang Shang suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Itadori with extremely cold eyes. The 88-gate bridge, the bloody massacre at your hands, and the bad appearance. Hearing this, Itadori immediately understood, and the 2 cursed spirits that he cooperated with Kugisaki Wild Rose to kill came to mind. I see. It's just that the 2 sides have different positions. If one side loses, then he and Kugisaki Wild Rose may end up even worse. So, he has no regrets. Thinking of this, Itadori looked at Shang Shang seriously. I didn't say anything special. But, Itadori looked away from Hong Zhang's murderous gaze and said truthfully, they cried in the end, muttering words like, brother, save me. The moment Itadori said the bad news and Shui too cried. His breathing stagnated, his pupils trembled violently, and blood dropped behind him and exploded into a rain of blood. Endless rage burned in his heart like a volcano erupting. The nails of his clenched fists were deeply embedded in his flesh, bleeding. He could already imagine in his mind the scene of his 2 younger brothers desperately reaching out their hands to ask for help before they died tragically. I'm sorry, it's my brother who failed to protect you. A few tears slid down his cheeks, and he slowly raised his head, looked at Itadori, and gritted his teeth and said, then, pay with your life. He shouted angrily and clasped his hands together. Blood beads boiling to the extreme condensed out. Red blood manipulation technique. By Lien. A blood arrow with the speed of sound was shot towards Itadori's head. Itadori knew clearly that if he was hit by this blow, he would definitely die. But the attack speed of the angry state is too fast. Itadori relied on his survival instinct to barely avoid the blow, but a long scar was torn on his face. But the furious Shang Shang would not stop there, and the crazy condensed bleeding arrows pierced the air and shot towards Itadori. Faced with this situation, even Itadori, who has been settling for a long time and has greatly improved in strength, can only dodge without any way to get close. As time goes by, Itadori's body has been scarred. Just when the situation couldn't be opened, the mechanical pill in the pocket suddenly reacted and gave the best plan. He analyzed at a glance that this was the red blood exercise technique passed down from the family's ancestors. This technique has almost no weaknesses, and is very powerful in both melee and long-range combat. But its only characteristic is that it cannot condense when it encounters water. So, at Mekamaru's suggestion, Itadori ran into the women's room without hesitation and turned on the faucet. The entire women's restroom was covered in water spray. The swelling phase was not carried away by anger and did not blindly follow him. After all, the other party is capable of killing his two younger brothers, and he is definitely not a fool. Therefore, the other party must be trying to play some trick. However, at this moment, the sound of mechanical pills came from the toilet door. Haha, don't you come over. As expected, he is a coward who only knows how to make sneak attacks, just like your two brothers. Obviously, the provoking method of the mechanical pill successfully angered the swelling phase. I must kill you to avenge Odudu. In the women's restroom, water splashed onto the floor. The two figures waved their fists and kicks, attacking each other directly. One is a good brother who avenges his younger brother, and the other is the youngest brother who killed two brothers. The moment Zhongxiang walked into the toilet and found that he could not condense his blood, he knew that he had fallen into the opponent's trap. So he had to control his blood to strengthen his fists, and start a life or death fight with Itadori in this narrow space. At first, Itadori had the upper hand by relying on his physical skills and exchanging injuries for injuries without considering the consequences. But from the moment he stepped into the women's restroom, he always had a drop of blood hidden in his palm. During the battle, side by side, he always used his wide sleeves to cover the blood drops. Call out. The bulging phase caught Itadori's brief swing back from punching, and the blood droplets hidden in the sleeves of the robe shot out instantly, penetrating Itadori's abdomen. From then on, the situation of the war began to turn. 2.5 minutes later, Itadori leaned against the wall, fainting. The Prime Minister slowly walked forward, looking down at Itadori as if he were looking at a dead person. He condensed a handful of extremely sharp blood and said coldly, "Go to the 9 springs and atone for your sins to my brother." Brush. A flash of blood. In Itadori's body, the sleeping Sunuo slowly opened his eyes and said disdainfully, "Trash, you can't even defeat this kind of thing." As if he noticed something, Sunuo raised his eyebrows, smiled, and continued to sleep with his eyes closed. In the toilet, the swollen bloody knife did not cut Itadori's neck at the last moment, but slashed towards the wall aside. Boom. The walls in the toilet collapsed. Zhongxiang suddenly opened his eyes, suddenly showing an expression of extreme despair. At the last moment when he swung the knife, he saw an incredible scene. In the fading memory of his mind, Itadori on the dining table rolled up a ball of ramen and fed it to himself with a smile. And sitting next to him were his other brothers. As their elder brother, Zhongxiang's happiness is his only dream in this life. But now it seems that all this is so ridiculous. He fell into the scam of Sha Yuji, and almost killed his youngest brother with his own hands. Thinking of this, Zhongxiang held his head in his hands, his emotions completely collapsed, and tears of despair could not stop falling. He dragged his tired body and staggered to the toilet. Finally, he squatted alone at the elevator door with his hands and knees, falling into autistic isolation. Until now, he can't believe that Itadori is actually his biological brother. Brothers killing each other was something he couldn't accept for a while. Not long after the expansion phase left, in the women's restroom, a short, hunchbacked figure walked in slowly. Luohu took out the cigarette rod and took a deep breath, touched the fire gravel insects surrounding his hand, and praised. "You did a good job, go back." Hearing this, the fire gravel insect, which had been affirmed by its master, cheered and flapped its wings, flying back into the mouth of the leaky coral pot. Looking at Itadori who fainted on the ground, a smile appeared on her lips. "Finally I found you. The cursed king from thousands of years ago. If you were to take action, you would definitely be able to kill Shalo, right?" At the same time, Shibuya's empty streets. Bang, bang, bang. The earth trembles violently. Natsuliu controlled Susanoo and moved forward unhurriedly. And ahead, the real person's hair was disheveled, his arms were twisted, and his whole body was charred, as if he had been burned by fire. All of this is the masterpiece of Shalo Amaterasu Black Flame. It has to be said that the real person has a strong desire to survive. After being burned by Amaterasu many times, he cut off his own body without hesitation. However, this also caused him to become weaker and weaker. Although the curse spirit could quickly repair his injuries by consuming the curse power. But now the real person has become a stranger. Not only was the mantra power exhausted, but the stored man-made mantra spirits were also used up. Run quickly, find Luahu, awakening Su Nuo will definitely kill him. You must not let that devil catch you, or else your life will be worse than death. The extremely strong desire to survive supported the real person's endless escape. As one of the natural disasters born from negative emotions, this is the first time that I am so embarrassed. It was also the first time that I felt the fear generated by myself. This smell turns out not to be pleasant at all, because these fears were born from his heart. Thump, the real person stumbled and fell to pieces. He was once so powerful that he regarded all living beings as nothing more than grass. The super-level curse spirit that could easily kill or transform thousands of people was tripped to the ground by a pebble at this moment. The real man raised his lower body in embarrassment, and with his bloodshot eyes, he looked back at the purple giant behind him who was holding a giant sword and chasing after him. At the center of the giant is Shalo. At this moment, Sha showed a ferocious smile, and in his hand was holding Tuo Gen's bleeding head. Shalo felt extremely happy. Master Lezi, do you have this day too? Then, he threw Tuo Gen's head downward. The head rolled down and bounced like a basketball, and finally rolled just right into the real person's hand. 2. Togen. Tuo Gen died completely, leaving only one head, and his eyes full of fear were still wide open. This scene made the real person tremble all over. Natsuru dismissed Susanoo, came to Masato, grabbed Masato's hair and lifted him up so that his toes were in the air. Your accomplices risked their lives to protect you. And you don't seem to be living up to your expectations, and you still couldn't escape. Looking at the real person who was trembling all over and with chattering teeth, Shalo then said with a playful smile. How's it going? Does the smell of fear you create smell good? No. Don't kill me. I don't want to die yet. The real person collapsed completely, broke away from Shalo's hands, and fell to the ground again. While shouting, he was like a lunatic who escaped from a mental hospital. Grab the dirt and stones from the ground and throw them towards Shalo. This is also his only attack method at present. However, the next scene made him even more desperate. Faced with the mud and stones thrown by Genren's tenacious resistance, Shalo did not dodge, but turned on the divine power of virtualization. Mud and stones passed through Shalo's body without any impact. The real person stopped what he was doing and looked at Shalo with a blank look on his face, with an expression of longing. However, what responded to him was the eternal kaleidoscope of scarlet and sad colors. The corners of Shalo's mouth raised, and he said indifferently, Sukadu. At this moment, everyone in the high school in the distance was staring dumbfounded at what was happening below. Why do I feel that Shalo is the villain? The neighborhood below. The real person's eyes were lifeless, he fell to his knees, and his whole body was twitching. There was an expression of extreme pain on his face, as if he was experiencing unimaginable torture. As the word, month reading, fell from Shalo's mouth, the real person's consciousness suddenly faded, and his vision went dark. The next second, he appeared in another space. The sky was blood red, and countless crows were passing by. His own limbs were nailed to the cold cross. Immediately afterwards, the Shalo in front of him suddenly divided into countless. They held sharp swords and stabbed at the real person. Ah! The screams spread throughout the empty Shibuya neighborhood. How much the real person at this moment hopes that he can die happily like Tuo Gen. He seems to have experienced this kind of tearing pain from the depths of his soul somewhere. Finally, as his consciousness faded away, he finally recalled it. It turns out that last time, the pain that came back from my clone regarding Junpei Yoshino was caused by the devil in front of me. Yu is dead. Tuo Gen is dead. But now I want to die, but it has become a luxury. At this moment, Genren regretted it. Luo Hu's original suggestion was right, prison gate territory should be left to the devil Shalo. Gojo Satoru will at least give himself a good time. The real man's screams naturally reached the ears of the experts on the tower in the distance. It turns out, it turns out that special level curse spirits at the level of natural disasters can also make such pitiful screams. Zen Garden Maki looked at the real person kneeling down below and sighed. However, such a sound made her feel inexplicably relieved. Yu complained while wiping the blood stains on the battle axe for her sister. Look, that guy Shalo laughs so horribly, it's creepy even from such a distance. Those who don't know think that Genrin is a good person, while Shalo is a cursor who does all kinds of evil. So, it would be better for my sister to stay away from Shalo from now on. TCH, what do little brats know? Clean your axe well. Shalo Mingming smiles very handsomely. Kugizuki Rose frowned and retorted. Maybe it was because Shalo saved her again. In short, she was more and more pleased with Shalo now. Therefore, she will naturally not let Yu slander Shalo. People directly adjacent to the Zenyuan couldn't help but ask. Hey, aren't you curious why the real person suddenly went crazy and screamed like crazy? It looked like he was undergoing torture. If I'm not presbyopic, Shalo didn't seem to have done anything to that special grade cursed spirit called Genrin just now, right? Why did you suddenly start screaming? As soon as these words came out, the curiosity of other people in the high school was aroused. That's right, Shalo doesn't seem to have taken any action, right? In their eyes, the real person knelt on the ground and kept trembling, while Shalo himself kept a grin and stood motionless. Being so far apart, it was impossible to know for a while what strange techniques Shalo used. Kugizuki Wild Rose's eyes lit up and she guessed, is it an illusion? She is the one who understands Shalo's abilities better among these people. Shalo's eyes seemed to flash a red light just now. If I remember correctly, it was a genjutsu. The East Hall of Kyoto Academy suffered from this trick back then. Mei nodded. Kugizuki is half right. What Shalo used just now was indeed an illusion, but it was a higher level illusion. Its name is Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi. Hearing this, everyone showed curiosity. From the name, it sounds pretty awesome. I just don't know what the real person is seeing in the illusion world right now. In other words, what did you feel? At this time, Mei then smiled and said, according to Shalo, the real person at this moment should be in great pain. He should be in an illusion space now and enjoying inhuman torture. This kind of pain goes far beyond the body and directly affects the soul, and the real weakness happens to be the soul. It may have only been a few minutes in the outside world now, but 3 days and 3 nights may have passed in the Tsukuyomi fantasy realm where the real person is. After hearing Mei's explanation, everyone's faces showed shock. What? 3 days and nights? Is there such a terrifying illusion in this world? Doesn't that mean that if the person who is pulled by the illusion is not strong enough in willpower, won't he be tortured directly into a fool? And for all this, Shalo, as a spellcaster, only needs a look. Kugizuki Wild Rose suddenly exclaimed, that's it. Now it finally makes sense. No wonder these natural disaster level special curse spirits always close their eyes when facing Shalo. I was very confused at first. It turns out that they have been guarding against Shalo's move. After understanding the situation, Yu couldn't help but shrink his neck, feeling frightened in his heart. It seems that I have to be more careful when facing Shalo in the future. If he trapped himself in the Tsukuyomi space and asked him to write his summer vacation homework for 3 days and 3 nights, his spirit would definitely collapse. It's scary to think about it. After all, it is really possible for this guy to do such a thing. Yu looked at her sister Mei and stammered. Sister, I am also his brother-in-law after all. He shouldn't use this trick on me, right? Mei tucked her long hair behind her ears, raised her brows slightly, and said with a half smile. That depends on whether you will be good or not in the future. Worry. On the other side, the person directly next to the Zenyuan opened his mouth, and his heart could not calm down for a long time. Before, Maki had always said that she couldn't even compare to Shalo with a finger. Looking at it now, it seems that she was not wrong. Whether it's the strength he showed before or this illusion called Tsukuyomi, it's extremely shocking. After all, the head of the special grade cursed spirit Tuogen, which once put him in danger and even caused him to lose his hand, is still stepping on Shalo's feet. To put it even more exaggeratedly, Shalo didn't even need to use his hands to hit him, just a look was enough. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. Although Gojo Satoru was sealed, he really made a good decision and actually attracted such a monster. I don't know where he found Shalo. If Shalo is allowed to join the Zenyuan family to assist my son Zenyuan Naoya. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a cold shout from Maki. Haha, assist your son Naoya. The old man still likes to daydream at this age. Do you feel in your conscience that Chanyuan Naozai is worthy of you? Even Shalo, the head of the Chanyuan family, may not be interested in you. The beards standing directly next to the Zen monastery are standing on end. But for a moment, he didn't know how to refute. In this comparison, his son Zenin Naoya seems to have lost some value. But he didn't pay too much attention to Maki's rudeness. After all, the two sisters had received a lot of cold looks from the Chanyuan family, and their own son would even mock them when they had nothing to do. At that time, as the head of the Zenyuan family, he did not stop this situation. But there is nothing that can be done about it. What the Zenyuan family believes in is strength and blood. At this moment, Nanami, who was in the back, suddenly said, "Why isn't Itadori-san here yet? Who among you is working with Itadori to find surviving humans?" Hearing this, everyone looked stunned. Yes, where are the Itadori people? Except for the thousands of humans who were previously trapped on the 5th floor of the subway station, there should not be many survivors within the area covered by the tent. Why hasn't Itadori come back? Kugizuki Wild Rose. I worked as a team with Sister Maki. We only found a few unconscious survivors. After handing them over to the auxiliary supervisor, we gathered here. Mei, I am responsible for rescuing the humans trapped on the -5th floor. Yu used magic to teleport them and then came here. Soon, the others shook their heads, indicating that they had not seen Itadori's whereabouts. In this regard, Nanami could only sigh helplessly. That kid Itadori has a very strong sense of responsibility. He will most likely search the entire Shibuya incident site before he gives up. I hope that's what I think. Meanwhile, down the block, Shalo grabbed the real person's head and lifted him up in the air. At this moment, the real person is already dying and has no strength to resist at all. He tilted his head, his eyes were distracted, and he kept muttering, "Kill me, kill me." Obviously, under the torture of Yudu, death has become a luxury for him. Shalo ignored his words and continued to press. "You are still stubborn, do you want to say it?" The real person struggled to open his doubtful eyes. "What exactly do you want me to say? From beginning to end, for 3 whole days and 3 nights, you didn't even ask. You asked me instead. You didn't ask any questions, what should I say?" At this point, the real person almost used his last bit of strength, roared out with a broken voice, and his tears of despair could no longer stop falling. "When I think about it, I was tortured to death for 3 consecutive days and 3 nights, and it all happened because the other party forgot to ask. If Shalo had asked himself earlier, maybe he could have been freed earlier. Devil, he is the real devil. Didn't I ask? That's really embarrassing." Shalo touched his nose awkwardly. "I was addicted to torturing the real person and couldn't help myself. It seemed that I really forgot to ask him. But it doesn't matter, there is no need to sympathize with Leslie. Then let me ask you, where is the leaky coral hidden? You are both one of the 4 major natural disasters, so you should be able to sense its location easily, right? Tell me its location and give you a good time, otherwise I'll let you enjoy it. It's useless if you close your eyes. I can slowly burn you with the Amaterasu black flame, or forcefully remove your eyelids." When these words fell into Junjun's ears, he shuddered involuntarily, and his whole body began to tremble slightly under control. But seeing the scarlet and magnificent patterns in Shalo's pupils slowly turning again, the real person didn't hesitate at all. After sensing the scent of the curse that was unique to Luhu, he stretched out his finger and pointed at the dark office building in the distance. "The leak is right there. Give me a good time." At the same time, the real person said silently in his heart, "Liuhu, please forgive me, I really don't want to go through that kind of torture again." Shalo looked in the direction pointed by the real person and thought to himself. It seems that the real person did not lie to himself, it is still exactly the same as the office building in the plot. Luahu must have picked up Itadori, who fainted, and may have started feeding Sunuo's fingers to Itadori at this moment. In that case, Natsuliu threw the real person to the ground like throwing garbage, and at the same time activated Amaterasu. Raging, the terrifying black flames were like hellfire, instantly engulfing the real person. Since the real person wanted to die, he no longer had any extra power to resist. In an instant, it was refined. Before dying, the real person stared at Shalo fiercely and suddenly laughed like crazy. Ha ha ha, do you think you won? Luahu has prepared a big gift for you, I'll be waiting for you in hell. Looking at the scorched black ground, Shalo raised the corner of his mouth slightly. Big gift, it was indeed a great gift to him. Think you don't know, what is Luahu doing now? What he is waiting for is the awakening of 15 Izuku Nuo. Everything before this was just a warm-up for him. Of course, the same is true for the plot in the original work. The real outbreak of the Shibuya incident only officially started from the moment Nuo woke up. At the same time, Shibuya office building, Nanako and Mimiko were sweating coldly as they carefully opened the mouth of Itadori, who was in a coma. Then, they stuffed their Nuo hands into Itadori's mouth. And behind the two women, there was a group of fire gravel insects flapping their wings. After doing all this, Nanako swallowed, looked at Lehu who was smoking behind her, and stammered. All finished. We have given him all the fingers we have. Let us go. Call. Liu who blew out a smoke ring, put the summoned fire gravel insect back into the mouth of the pot, and said expressionlessly. I'll let you live one more day for the time being and stand aside. You can't leave without my permission. It had heard that with Nuo's character, these two women might be able to be sacrificed to Nuo. Later, Luohu took out an old box, tore off the seal, and opened the box. Boom! An extremely evil and domineering spell instantly enveloped the entire room. Nanako and Mimiko hugged each other, looking at the Nuo fingers in the box with fearful expressions. If you count carefully, there are actually 10 of them. Are you crazy? If you feed him so much at once, Nuo will wake up, and then the whole country will. Shut up. If you say one more word, you will be burned until your ashes are left. Luahu's purpose this time is to awaken Liangmi and Nuo. As for the safety of the entire country, what does it have to do with it? Even if you lose your own life, it doesn't matter. Just now, as one of the 4 great natural disasters, it felt that the auras of Zhenren and Tuojen had completely disappeared. Obviously, they all died in the hands of that Shalo. The only person who can kill Shalo now is Nuo, the cursed king from thousands of years ago. Thinking of this, Riko began to take out her fingers and feed them into Itadori's mouth. Shayuji once said, Itadori's is the strongest vessel that has been seen in thousands of years. Even if he were allowed to swallow 20 of Nuo's fingers, he would not be given physical dominance to Nuo. But this is a case of feeding 1 tube a day. If Itadori eats more than 10 fingers at one time, he won't have time to adapt. Therefore, the dominance of the body will be temporarily occupied by Nuo. As the leaky corals continued to be fed, the cursed aura on Itadori's body continued to rise, and the unique lines of the King of Curses began to appear on his face. In this way, Itadori will have at least 15 fingers in his body. There should be no problem in killing Shalo. Please, don't continue feeding me. You can't bear the consequences. Because the curse aura became stronger and stronger, Nanako on the side had some difficulty breathing. Luahu felt annoyed and reached out to teach the two of them a lesson. But the next second, his eyes suddenly widened. I saw that my outstretched arm was broken off without realizing it, and the incision was neat and smooth. Immediately afterwards, the real voice of the devil came to my ears. Give you a second, take your hands away. Go away. Nuo's deep and hoarse voice sounded. Lehu immediately retreated and stood side by side with Nanako and the other 2 girls. The terrifying evil aura swept over. Luahu's eyes widened, his whole body couldn't stop trembling, and he didn't dare to act rashly. The Nanako sisters wearing jocks next to them had already been so frightened by the evil aura exuded by Nuo that they didn't even dare to breathe hard. Only by supporting each other can we barely stand firm. Looking at Nuo who was slowly walking towards me, Luahu had a lump in his throat and felt hairs on his back. What a terrifying smell. This is crushing from the upper level of life. Is this the cursed king from thousands of years ago? This is completely different from the strength of Gojo Satoru, and the suffocating pressure can't help but suffocate. I don't know who is stronger between the two, but Sunuo can definitely kill Shalo. Sunuo lifted up his hair expressionlessly and said indifferently. Heads up too high. Hearing this, Luohu immediately knelt down on one knee, while the two sisters beside him were trembling on the ground. The next moment, whoosh, a slash that was too fast to be caught by the naked eye flew past at such a high speed. The wall behind him was instantly cut in half like tofu, but Luohu knelt down on one knee, causing 1/3 of his Tianlinggai to be cut off. Thick blood spurted out. Luohu endured the severe pain and fear, but his body still couldn't help but tremble. Your consciousness is obviously not as high as the two of them, Huoshantu. As soon as these words came out, Luohu shuddered all over and immediately buried his head again for a few minutes. But it never kneeled down like the two sisters next did. It is a natural disaster, and the last bit of pride in my heart does not allow it to do this. For the sake of those 10 fingers, tell me, Volcano Head. Sunuo put his hands in his pockets and looked with interest at Luohu, who had not dared to recover from his injuries. Clepsydra took a deep breath and said, please help me kill a spellcaster named Shalo. In return, I will do my best to find the remaining fingers for you. Did you hear that? You are more hated than me, the king of curses, ha ha ha. Sunuo suddenly smiled strangely at the air in front of him. Hearing this, Luohu suddenly looked back. I saw Shalo appearing quietly behind the three of them. You, when did you? Luohu looked at Shalo in disbelief. Shalo looked at the confused Luohu and the two sisters wearing JK costumes beside him. Presumably, they are Nanako and Mimiko who want to kill Kensuo and liberate Sha Yuji's body, right? Why was the chamber pot cut off? What a pity. Shalo sighed pretending to be disappointed, then looked at Sunuo who was smiling slyly in front of him, and then thought to himself. As expected of a double-faced Nuo, he actually has 4 eyes, tisk tisk. After all, Sunuo's eyes may be a disaster to others, but they are more beneficial to him. Huh, what do you mean? Sunuo looked at Shalo with some confusion. Are you scared? Back then I only had the strength of 3 fingers, which made you stand out. Now I will slowly kill you, and it's useless to beg for mercy. Afraid, Shalo took out his ears and said calmly, I just think you have too many eyes, which are dazzling. I'll randomly poke 2 of them blind later. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, the two sisters on the ground were so frightened that their hearts beat rapidly, and cold sweat dripped down their hair and fell on their hands. Did you hear that right? He wants to poke blind Liangmian Sunuo's eyes. Is this person tired of living, or has he drank fake wine? How dare you provoke the two-faced Sunuo like this? Luohu, on the other hand, was more concerned about what Sunuo had said before. It turns out that Shalo had fought against Sunuo a long time ago. And listening to Sunuo's tone, it seems that he was suppressed by Shalo. But then it breathed a sigh of relief. At that time, Sunuo only had the strength of 3 fingers, and he could win even if it were him. But now Sunuo has 15 fingers of strength. This is far from being calculated as 5 times the strength. Shalo's words completely angered Sunuo. This idiot Shalo is too arrogant and arrogant. He not only came to seek death, but also said something about stabbing Sunuo's eyes out. It's really ridiculous. In this way, there is no need to worry about whether Sunuo will kill him. Shalo will definitely die today. Hehe. Not only was Sunuo not angry, but he sneered, you still have such a sharp mouth, and you still think I have the same 3-finger strength as before. Shalo, it doesn't stop me from poking your eyes. Sunuo, let me give you another chance to speak, otherwise I will chop you into meat paste and feed it to the dogs immediately. Shalo, get out. Sunuo's face suddenly darkened. The surrounding air suddenly condensed. Hiss. The 3 people in Luohu took a deep breath and knelt on the ground, not daring to make a sound. Crazy. Really crazy. At the same time, Shibuya Tower. Everyone in the high school looked curiously at the office building in the distance that had a power outage. Strange, why did Shalo suddenly go to the office building when he was fine? Could it be that he found the location of the volcano head? But after all this time, there are still no signs of fighting. Kugizuki Wild Rose couldn't help but hold her chin in doubt. Nanami frowned. Why don't you let teacher Mei Mei use the crow shikigami to observe it? For a moment, everyone looked at Mei Mei expectantly. It's good to have Shalo as the backbone. They originally had to fight to the death with special level curse spirits, but now they can enjoy the show on top of this high tower. If the security hadn't been completely lifted yet, they would have even wanted to buy some popcorn and eat it while watching. Moreover, 3 of the 4 major natural disasters have been eliminated by Shalo, and the remaining one may not be able to escape Shalo's clutches. Yu put her hands on her hips and said dissatisfiedly, "You guys, do you really regard your elder sister as a tool?" Kugizuki Wild Rose. TCH, Sister Mei Mei hasn't spoken yet, what are you yelling about, you little brat? You. Just as the two were arguing, Mei Mei suddenly opened her beautiful eyes, her expression extremely solemn. The situation was not good. My crow was chopped into pieces before it even got close to the office building. The most important thing is that at the last moment, I felt an extremely terrifying evil aura. Exactly the same as the previous Yingji Children's Palace. Nanami's expression suddenly changed. You mean, two-faced slut? Mei Mei nodded solemnly. Besides Liang Mi and Sunuo, who else could exude such an evil aura that makes one's heart palpitate? What? Liang Mi and Sunuo actually woke up. That also proves that Itadori is also in that building, and his body is occupied by Sunuo. Mei Mei nodded, took the battle axe from Yu, and said in a deep voice. I'm afraid the real war is about to begin. I'm afraid Itadori was captured by the volcano-headed curse spirit, and Sunuo's aura this time is far stronger than what I felt before. Do you still remember that Sunuo's finger was stolen at the previous sister exchange meeting? Chapter 91, Kugizuki Wild Rose. Sister Mei Mei, you mean, that volcano head fed all of Sunuo's fingers to Itadori? It turns out that their ultimate goal is to awaken Sunuo. Now, how many fingers are there in Itadori's body? Mei Mei, I guess in addition to the fingers from the high school, the other party also has a collection of them. So, there are at least a dozen of them in Itadori's body now. More than 10 roots. At this time, boom, an explosion suddenly sounded. The office building in the distance burst into flames, and you could vaguely see it in the thick smoke. A figure flew out like a cannonball. Everyone in the high school exclaimed, "It's a tiger, no, it's Sunuo." Immediately afterwards, Shalo's familiar figure appeared in sight. Whoosh, Shalo flashed past and appeared behind Sunuo in an upside-down shape. Quickly form seals with your hands and shoot out a ball of fire from your mouth. The fireball rolled up the surrounding buildings and condensed into a huge fireball that burned towards Sunuo. In the blink of an eye, Sunuo had fallen to the ground. He put his hands in his pockets, attached the magic power to his feet, and shuttled through the streets like skating. Looking at the huge fireball attacking him in the sky, Sunuo smiled disdainfully. Playing with fire in front of me. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out his hands and clapped them casually. Snapped. The fireball seemed to be controlled, falling to the ground at an uncontrollable speed, setting off a large fire. Dee. The huge explosion caused the sirens of nearby electric vehicles to ring non-stop. When the smoke cleared, Sunuo spread his hands and said disdainfully, "That's it. It's so boring." Whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, a blurry afterimage flashed past. Just as Sunuo was about to turn his head, there was a huge push from behind, and his whole body was blown away. Bang bang bang. Sunuo's body flew forward like a kite with its string broken, smashing through all the buildings along the way. However, Sunuo still maintained an excited smile on his face. This will make you a little more qualified. Work harder and try your best to please me. Sunuo opened his hands and let himself fly upside down and crash through the buildings layer after layer, as if he was enjoying the pleasure of free fall. To him now, these attacks can barely be regarded as massages. This time, he's going to take his time. Really, you want to dance too? Suddenly, Shalo's indifferent voice came to his ears. Sunuo was slightly surprised and opened his small eyes on his cheekbones, glancing diagonally back. This guy can actually avoid my perception and detour behind him in advance. Thinking of this, Sunuo suddenly closed his eyes. Because Shalo's 2 fingers have already poked over. Court death. Sunuo was angry. Did this guy really want to poke his eyes out? Just when he raised his hand and was about to launch a slashing attack, the collar behind his neck suddenly tightened. Then the whole person was thrown directly into the sky. Shalo used Flying Thunder God, and yellow lightning flashed in the night sky. Inside the office building, a big hole has been punched out in the wall. Nanako and Mimiko were lying by the window, looking down blankly. Mr. Volcano Head, who has the upper hand, Shalo and Sunuo are so fast that they can cross the entire block in just one instant. With the strength of the two of them, it is impossible to see clearly the figures of their battle. I thought that the person named Shalo was here to seek death, but I didn't expect that he had such strength. If I read it correctly just now, the first person to be kicked out was Sunuo, right? Lu, who silently used his magic power to repair Tian Lingai's wounds, and glanced at the two women lightly. HMPH, Sunuo is obviously just playing around. Once he gets serious, Shalo will definitely die. In his opinion, Sunuo didn't even perform the most basic slashes. What's this if it's not for fun? He didn't regard Shalo as his opponent at all. At the same time, Shibuya Tower, the heads of everyone in the high school kept swinging regularly with the lightning in the sky. In their sight, they could barely see the golden trails left in the sky. So fast, I can't even catch the afterimage. I really didn't expect that after devouring so many fingers, Shalo could still suppress Sunuo's beating. Mei said objectively. At this stage, both of them are still in the trial stage and cannot tell the outcome of the battle. The person directly next to the Zenyuan opened his mouth, but for a long time he didn't know what to say. Faced with such an outrageous speed, can the 24 frames per second projection spell that he is proud of really be able to keep up? Obviously, the answer is no. Whether it was Shalo or Sunuo, in front of these two people, I was as slow as a snail. The neighborhood below. Shalo looked at the unharmed Sunuo opposite him and sighed. To say that Liangmian Sunuo is really strong, there are 2 points. One is to tie up the ties and cut off the lone space. The second is the resistance of its physical body. In the original work, not only did he resist the ultimate moves of the experts many times, but he even survived Gojo Satoru's face-to-face virtual attack. And it is obviously impossible for his own fist to cause too much damage to him. Thinking of this, Shalo looked at Sunuo with a smile. You are not as fast as me, sooner or later you will be poked in the eye by me. How about you just obey me? This way you can at least retain some dignity. Idiot. Sunuo grinned evilly, clenched his fists and made a cracking sound. You haven't figured out your position yet. Before he finished speaking, purple light and shadow appeared on his face. Ha, I remember this trick. Boom. Susanoo suddenly waved his sword. Sunuo instantly flew upside down and crashed deeply into the unfinished building behind him, sending up dust all over the sky. Natsuliu lifted Susanoo, feeling the real blow, and said with a smile, "It feels good." However, the next second, a big hole opened in the wall. Sunuo held a glass of drink in his right hand and walked over casually with popcorn he got from nowhere in his left hand. It seemed that the blow just now did not cause much damage to him. Sunuo's clothes had been split open by the knife just now, but the deep cut mark on his chest was quickly repaired by the reverse curse technique. Only light scratches remain. Sunuo took a sip of the drink in his hand and immediately frowned. Is it still so bad after 1,000 years? Shalo, I bought it for 0 yuan, but the requirements are quite a lot. Haha, I'm the king of curses, so I still have to pay for things. After saying that, Sunuo spit out the drink he had inhaled at his feet, and then threw the bottle back. Swish, swish, swish. The slash was activated, and the drink was instantly cut into countless small pieces. The things that disgust me end up like this, and you. Speaking of this, Sunuo suddenly opened his eyes wide. What? Shalo came to Sunuo's side in an instant and punched out with a black flash, accompanied by black thunder. Boom. Sunuo, who had no reaction at all, had his face twisted and was blown hundreds of meters away. Amazing speed. Sunuo put one hand on the surface of the building, hanging upside down, and couldn't help but sigh. Then he suddenly raised his head, faced the air in front of him, grinned ferociously and shouted, "Come on." Whoosh. Shalo arrives in response. Sunuo raised his hand decisively and said calmly, /8. Whoosh. The invisible sewing machine sweeps across the summer fluid surface like a laser. A smile of success appeared on Sunuo's lips. No matter how fast you go, can you be faster than my slash? However, the next second, his expression immediately froze. I saw that Shalo, who had been cut into pieces of flesh, suddenly turned into 4 half-cut wooden piles. Sunuo looked dull. Nani? Then he immediately recalled that Shalo also used this trick to deceive his own eyes when he was in Yingji Children's Palace. Gee, are all the arts this guy is doing or doing tricks? Just as Sunuo turned his 4 eyes at high speed to find Shalo's location, a strange light suddenly flashed behind his back. Sunuo was stared at with hair all over his body and looked back. However, he found that his vision was dim, and then 2 pairs of eyes suddenly opened. Like the eyes of the devil in hell, it wants to pull him into the endless abyss. The scarlet magatama blood pupils and the purple eyes full of mysterious lines occupied his entire field of vision. For a moment, Sunuo's spirit fell into a brief trance. Facing Shalo's oncoming whip legs, he didn't make any resistance. The green chakra flame adhered to the body surface, and Shalo's kick was like a sharp axe, sweeping across Sunuo's chest. Boom! There was a muffled sound, and Sunuo flew back, then quickly stopped. Ha 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 ha! Sunuo looked at Shalo standing on the top of the building and suddenly let out a weird laugh. Illusion. Many so-called justice magicians have used it on me over thousands of years. But in the end, I pulled out all their eyes with my own hands and then crushed them. So, the current generation of conjurers who are capable of illusions should end their inheritance. Are you their descendant? Thinking of this, Sunuo couldn't help but feel funny. No wonder this kid, who always wanted to poke his own eyes blind, was actually trying to avenge his elders in the family. Shalo was also a little surprised. Some of the conjurers from thousands of years ago could actually perform illusions. But then I thought about it, and it was reasonable. There were all kinds of strange spells in the world of magic, and it was normal to have illusions. It seems that Sunuo has a strong ability to resist illusions. But it's not surprising. As the cursed king from 1,000 years ago, his mental power is probably no weaker than his own strength. Otherwise, it would be impossible to survive the siege of so many illusionists and magicians back then. However, Sunuo may have misunderstood one thing. His illusion skills are not comparable to those of those people back then. Sunuo probably hasn't tried Tsukuyomi yet, right? But if Sunuo is to be tricked, it's best to take him by surprise. Thinking of this, Shalo formed a seal with his hands. Wood release. Wood dragon technique. Complete the mudra quickly with the flow of summer. The ground below suddenly shook violently, and then suddenly opened a huge gap. A huge figure flew out of the crack. Ho ho ho. The terrifying roar of the dragon echoed throughout Shibuya. In fact, the sound penetrates everyone's eardrums. The terrifying power made many weaker people weak. Everyone looked up at the sky in horror. I saw a huge wooden dragon hovering in the sky, looking in all directions as if it were alive. Under the control of Shalo, the wooden dragon swooped down towards Sunuo, and the buildings along the way collapsed. Sunuo kept walking through the streets, avoiding the collision of the wooden dragon. Shibuya Tower. Everyone in the high school was completely dumbfounded. What a terrifying sense of oppression. Is this really a magic trick? Can it be done? The person directly next to the Zenyuan looked at the giant dragon hovering in the sky and sighed. Teacher Mei, I admit that the voice I spoke before was a bit loud. The moment the wooden dragon was summoned, it shattered all the surrounding buildings. The range of such an attack is probably more than 500 meters, right? Recalling what he had said before questioning Shalo, he couldn't help but blush. Fortunately, they were hiding far away, otherwise they would most likely be affected. At the same time, inside the office building, Clepsydra looked at the huge wooden dragon in the sky in the distance and fell into deep thought. Fire. Mr. Volcano Head, how is the battle situation now? Nanako's eyes were timid and she mustered up the courage to ask again. In the comparison between Shalo and Sunuo, the leaky coral that nearly killed them before seemed less scary. It seems to be reasonable. Unlike Luahu who unconditionally supported Sunuo in killing Shalo, they had only one purpose. Whoever can help them kill the guy who takes over Sha Yuji's body, they will give everything. Even if it is, life doesn't matter. At this moment, 2 footsteps suddenly came from behind. It's really unexpected. I didn't expect that Liang Mi and Su Nuo would not be able to kill him for a while. Is it possible that the world of magic is about to add another person with fault-breaking strength? The person who spoke was none other than Sha Yuji. At this time, next to him, a mushroom white-haired girl wearing a black and white robe and long bangs suddenly spoke up and retorted. The strength master Su Nuo has shown so far is just the tip of the iceberg. As long as he wants to, no one can survive his attacks. This was true 1,000 years ago, and it is the same now after 1,000 years. Li Mei's face was cold, and there was no room for doubt in her words. If anyone dares to refute him at this time, he will kill him without hesitation. Sha Yuji held the prison gate with Wu Jiaowu sealed, squinting and smiling. Okay, I know that Li Mei is a loyal subordinate of Liang Mi and Su Nuo. It is naturally best if you can kill Sha Lu. Aren't everyone present watching the battle with this mentality? Are you right, Luohu? Then he unexpectedly looked at the 2 sisters next to him who were hostile to him, and said, "Why, when you see your leader, don't you bow down and salute?" Nanako grabbed Mimiko's arm tightly and gritted her teeth. "You are not our leader, you are just a parasite that steals other people's bodies." At this moment, a terrifying aura spread throughout Shibuya and attracted everyone's attention. The corners of Luohu's mouth curved slightly. "Su Nuo, you are starting to get serious." High in the sky, Su Nuo stopped, looked at the wooden dragon that was coming and roared at him, and slowly raised his hands. Infinite. 8. Infinite solution. As soon as he finished speaking, countless slashes appeared within 100 meters range centered on him. At this moment, the huge wooden dragon that was charging seemed to turn into food on a chopping board, and was instantly cut into countless equal-sized wooden pieces. Su Nuo looked down at Sha Lu below and said with a disdainful smile, "If you have any other moves, use them together. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance." Seeing this scene, Sha Lu couldn't help but sigh. Su Nuo's sword skills are pretty good, no wonder the name of the domain contains the word, cook. Since you like cutting, I'll let you cut as much as you want today. Then, Sha Lu pressed his hands on the ground, wouldn't escape. The birth of the tree world. Boom, countless green and twisted giant trees that reached the sky broke out of the ground. As if they were alive, they rolled towards Su Nuo high in the sky. For a time, the high-rise buildings and neighborhoods around Shibuya were almost completely submerged by a sea of wood. Before long, most of Shibuya turned into a green virgin forest. Seeing this shocking scene in front of him, Su Nuo's eyes were full of excitement. I really didn't expect that I could actually perform such a super standard technique. Even I feel a little ashamed of myself. But, Su Nuo raised his hands again and grinned evilly, "I will cut as much as you want." Swish swish, countless slashes shot out of the air, cutting all the twisted giant trees into pieces. Then, the number of wood escapers far exceeded the wood dragons. Under this endless surge of wood, Su Nuo, who used his slashing attack, could only hinder the close approach of the giant tree for a while. Unless, Su Nuo immediately opens the field to subdue the demon and cook. Seeing this, Sha Lu smashed the drink vending machine placed on the street with one punch and took out a bottle of Coke. While drinking and watching Su Nuo's performance, he wanted to see when Su Nuo could cut it. Saw this scene, Kugizuki Wild Rose at the high tower twitched her lips. Are these two playing fruit cutting? Look at Su Nuo's expression now, he seems to be having a great time. It's true that this guy Sha Lu actually sat aside and drank a drink. Mei Mei held her forehead and sighed. Yes, wouldn't it be better to deal with Su Nuo as soon as possible? He actually still has the heart to watch Su Nuo cutting fruit while drinking drinks. However, this also showed that Sha Lu was not under much pressure to fight against Su Nuo, which also made everyone in the high school breathe a sigh of relief. Nanami was speechless. Do you want to take a look at yourselves before you say anything else? Now Sha Lu is fighting against the cursed king from 1,000 years ago. A strong person on the same level as Gojo Satoru may lose his life if he is not careful. Once Sha Lu loses, and Gojo Satoru is sealed and unable to come out, it shouldn't be difficult to imagine what the consequences will be, right? A person directly adjacent to the Zen Yuan said, I agree. Although I'm very helpful, obviously, everyone present, including me, can't get involved in a battle of this level. To put it simply, if you go, you will get it as a gift. Unless it's Okatsu Yuta, 99 Yuki, a special magician of that level who can help. Mei, by the way, didn't Dongtang go make a phone call? As long as he can call Juju Yuki, the balance of the war will tilt towards our side. Nanami, I find it difficult. That woman who only knows how to travel may not come here even if the world is destroyed tomorrow. At the same time, inside the office building, several scattered invisible wind blades cut through Li Mei's neck, and traces of blood oozed from the wounds. Raimai stretched out her hand to touch the wound, then put the finger stained with the wound into her mouth, her eyes slightly narrowed with an expression of great enjoyment. As expected of Lord Su Nuo, his strength is still the same as before. The blood from his wounds has become delicious. This scene made Luohu and others' mouths twitch in secret. Unexpectedly, Li Mei, who looks arrogant on the surface, actually has such a side. Li Mei didn't pay attention to the strange looks from others, but folded his arms, raised his chin, and said arrogantly, although I must not admit that the boy named Shalo has some strength, it is obvious that Master Su Nuo is even more powerful. Faced with such a large-scale attack, it can still be chopped into pieces. Not even a single scratch is injured. Sha Yuji, how do we feel that Shalo seems to be teasing Su Nuo? You see, he still wants to drink. As soon as these words came out, Li Mei was instantly unhappy. He glanced coldly. If you dare to say such disrespectful words again, our cooperation will be terminated immediately. Ha ha, do you dare to do this without Su Nuo's consent? As soon as these words came out, Li Mei's face instantly darkened. Boom, click, the entire room was instantly frozen. The temperature suddenly dropped to negative numbers. The two weakest sisters, Nanako, had their legs and feet shaking from the cold and could only hug each other to keep warm. Sha Yuji remained unmoved, but looked at Luohu and said calmly, Luohu, I'm sorry to trouble you. After Luohu cast a spell to raise the temperature, he persuaded, no matter what, Shalo must die today. Even if he is equally matched with Su Nuo, we can still take advantage of the opportunity to make a sneak attack, right? Sha Yuji praised, you are much smoother, Liuhu. Luohu took a deep look at Sha Yuji, and said, Master, Tuo Zhen died in Shalo's hands. If he were not careful, he might not be alive now. Sha Yuji, are you blaming me for not taking action to save Zhenren Tuo Zhen? Luohu snorted and turned her head away, ignoring him. You and I know very well that before, even if I took action, I couldn't protect Zhenren and the others. I'm not good at fighting. Sha Yuji felt a little regretful. Among the four major natural disasters, Zhenren is the one he is most optimistic about. Although in terms of strength, Zhenren is the weakest. But both his talent and learning ability are amazing. If he is allowed to continue to grow, it will be a matter of time before he surpasses Liuhu. At that time, he can absorb the real person and turn it into nutrients. But unfortunately, so many layers of tents were arranged for Shalo in advance, and even the formation ice stones accumulated over the years were almost used up on this day. But in the end, it still failed to stop him from intervening in the battle, but fortunately Gojo Satoru was sealed, and the Shibuya incident was not in vain. After calming down, Li Mei thought for a while and suddenly said, I agree with Huo Shantu's proposal. It is best if it can help Mr. Su Nuo. But there must be a premise, that is, Master Su Nuo's interest cannot be defeated. This office building is relatively close to the people on the battlefield. If you really want to take action, you will definitely be able to do it before everyone else in the High Commissioner. Now that both sides can feel their respective auras, it's better to wait for the battle to unfold first. At this moment, Kai Kaizi suddenly widened her eyes and exclaimed, Look, Sky, what are you calling? Luohu scolded the two women. If he wasn't worried that Su Nuo would be useful to them, they would have been burned to ashes long ago. Then, Luohu looked towards the sky along their lines of sight, then his eyes widened and he froze on the spot. Snap! The cigarette rod fell out of his mouth and hit the ground. An extremely bizarre scene appeared. The entire sky actually turned blood red. Crowds of crows hovered in the sky and made ominous hoarse cries. If you look closely, you can even find that the crow's eyes are also scarlet, and there are even a few black magatama in the pupils. Beautiful and miserable red, containing magatama, etc. These eyes. Daughter Shalo. Luahu exclaimed. Illusion. It's an illusion. It actually forgot to remind Sunuo of this. If you let it go, Shalo's strongest point is not those super standard spells, nor is it the weird black flame that cannot be extinguished. It's the illusion that is hard to guard against. Li Mei said dissatisfied. What are you yelling about? Master Sunuo is not afraid of these heresy. Listen to Mushroom Head. Shalo's illusions are not heresy. We'd better take action now. Luahu knew that when Shalo used illusion, he would follow the other person into the illusion space. So in theory, this is the best time for a sneak attack. It doesn't know what Sunuo's ability to resist illusions is, and maybe it won't lose its mind and attack itself like it did last time. But he will definitely be affected by illusion. After all, Sunuo has so many eyes. If he doesn't fall for the illusion, who will? Sha Yuji nodded in agreement. Luhu is right, Shalo's illusion skills cannot be compared with those magicians from thousands of years ago. Furthermore, is there anyone in the world of magic who can materialize illusions? After saying that, he looked up at the blood-red sky, looked at the prison gate with Gojo Satoru sealed in his hand, and murmured. Gojo Satoru said before he was sealed by me that the strongest position in the contemporary era will be replaced by someone at any time. I still didn't believe it at the time, but obviously, this person appeared. Gojo Satoru would actually say such a thing. If this is really the case, then you must consider it carefully. Thinking of this, Li Mei clenched her fists and stared at Shalo squatting on the telephone pole in the distance. For some reason, even though he was so far apart, I could feel a strange power coming from him. Especially those eyes that were always shining red, even if they didn't look at each other, they could make him feel a little palpitated. Could this be an ominous force? Just when Li Mei looked at him carefully and wanted to see through him, Shalo in the distance seemed to sense something. He raised his hand to cover his samsara eyes, and quickly looked towards the office building in the distance, locked onto Li Mei, and grinned. You, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Li Mei involuntarily took 2 steps back, clutching her chest and breathing rapidly, and a few drops of cold sweat broke out on her forehead at some point. This guy, it's really extraordinary. Even though they were so far apart, just the moment they looked at each other could make him feel fearful. When Luahu saw that Li Mei was deflated, he felt an inexplicable pleasure in his heart, but he reminded him seriously. I would like to advise you not to meet that guy's eyes. At the same time, he disdained the innuendo. Only this arrogant and ignorant mushroom head would be stupid enough to take the initiative to look into those eyes. If you think you come from ancient times and look down on today's magicians, you will die miserably. Not only Shalo, but he also always remembers that there are several special level students in the high school who have never shown up. Sha Yuji smiled and nodded. You're right, they all, including myself, closed their eyes when facing Shalo. This time, Li Mei did not freeze the room in anger, but looked solemn and said harshly. Although Lord Sunuo is definitely stronger than Shalo, that guy is extremely cunning at first glance. You can tell from the way you turned your head and smiled just now. So I reluctantly agreed to Shanto's proposal and launched a sneak attack on Shalo. End this farce as soon as possible. Regarding this, Luohu secretly cursed in his heart. The paralyzed mushroom girl, why are you pretending to be proud? If it hadn't been for Sunuo's ability to kill Shalo, would it have spent so much effort feeding its fingers? If Sunuo didn't have this ability, those fingers wouldn't be given to Sunuo even if they were used to feed the dog. Then let's set off. Whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 figures jumped directly from the 20-story high-rise building. As a result, only the Nanako sisters were left shivering in the corner in the office building. Nanako, what should we do? Now I hope that the man named Shalo can win. He is from a high school and is a mortal enemy of these people. If he wins, maybe he will take action to get rid of that fool who has taken over Master Sha Yu's body. But looking at it now, the chances of winning are not very high. After all, the pressure of fighting against Sunuo is already great. If we suffer a sneak attack from the volcano head. Although the 3 people just now are much worse than Sunuo, they are all super strong men. Nanako, who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised her head and said firmly. Then let's go tell the High Commissioner about this news. Maybe there's still a chance for them to take action. If Sunuo wins, then what value do the two of them have for Sunuo to use? But if the high school side wins, they will have a lot of chips. For example, tell them the hiding places of many curse masters and the plan mentioned by the fake Shayuji just now. The two women have only one purpose from beginning to end. That is to free Master Shayuji's body. The other side. Mei Mei frowned slightly. The sky was blood red. This should be Shalu's method. But just now I seem to vaguely feel three powerful auras. Could it be that the curse spirits intervened? But my crow didn't observe. Nanami walked over. Mei Mei, do you feel it too? Well, there were three faint waves of powerful spell power passing by quickly just now, but the suspicious thing is that my crow didn't notice it. Is it an illusion? Just when the two were confused, two girls suddenly hurried from behind. It was Nanako and Mimiko. The two women were panting. After Mei Mei looked at it, she raised her eyebrows slightly and raised her battle axe. Curse Master. Wait, we have something important to say. There are three special level ones rushing towards the center of the battlefield. Their purpose is to sneak attack Shalu. Facing the scrutinizing looks of everyone in the high college, the two of them were afraid that they wouldn't believe it, so they continued. One with a volcano head, thought to be the fake Shayuji, and one with a mushroom head, said to be Sunuo's cook. Then, the two women frankly explained what happened and their purpose. Only in this way can we quickly gain the trust of the college. Hearing this, everyone present at the high school looked stunned. Mei Mei, Nanami, it seems that our feeling is correct. The group is starting to become restless. Kugisaki Wild Rose looked anxious. Cunning curse spirit. Let's go and help. Help. The person directly next to the Zenyuan laughed at himself and looked at his broken arm. A disabled old man, plus a seriously injured Nanami. The only one who is better is Miss Mei Mei. Two of the only three first-level spellcasters on our side are disabled, but the other party has three special level ones in their prime. Are you sure you're not going to cause trouble for Shalu? As soon as these words came out, everyone present fell into silence. Although what the old man from the Zenyuan family said is hard to hear, it is reality. Fushiguro Megumi looked determined. How about I let Moxura come out? The people directly next to the Zenyuan gave him a fierce look. If you can't control it, everyone here will die. Others may not have a specific idea of the power of the alien god General Demon Shuluo, but as the former head of the Zen Academy, he knows its terror. Once Fushiguro fails to subdue Moxuluo, the consequences will be disastrous. Didn't you say that Natsuliu is the same as Gojo Satoru? He is always at his strongest when alone. Unless there is a super magician who goes to help, it will be a drag on us. As soon as he finished speaking, the roar of a motorcycle came from behind. Didi, oh, I heard there is a shortage of special ones here. What do you think of me? Everyone suddenly turned around. Motorbike girl. No, 90-year-old Yuki. I saw a slim brown-haired woman wearing tight jeans and sunglasses, taking off her helmet, looking at the crowd and smiling. You're actually here. Also, this is Shibuya Tower. How did you drive a motorcycle up here? Juju Yuji took the key, put it on his fingertips and turned it in circles as usual, and walked slowly. Although I'm not happy that my travel plans were interrupted, if I don't come again, Dongtang and Yagaladen will call my phone all the time. As she said that, she took out her phone with a bored look on her face, stretched out her slender fingers and swiped it up and down twice. The phone screen showed all missed calls. As for how I rode the bike up, I naturally found a slope and rode the bike up. Is this difficult for a super-level magician? It's just a basic operation. After saying that, she put her hands on her hips, raised her chin slightly, and looked proud. Everyone, is it true that no one praises me? It's really sad. Okay, why don't you tell me what the current situation is? Why is half of Shibuya turned into virgin forest along the way? Then, everyone in the High Commissioner quickly introduced the general process of the matter. After some understanding, Juju Yuji's eyes flashed with excitement. Is that person named Shalu already so strong? He can actually fight Sunuo back and forth. What a fascinating guy. I wonder what kind of woman he likes. Thinking of this, she waved her hands to everyone and said in a casual tone. Don't worry, Toto and the weird guy who calls himself Itadori's brother will block their way. They should hold up until I arrive. At the same time, the center of the battlefield, Shalo felt that the time had come and waved his hand to release Mudun. Sunuo put his hands in his pockets, suspended in the air, and looked at Shalo standing at the telephone pole. The technique is very powerful, but unfortunately it can't get close to me. Shalo's lips slightly opened, and he whispered softly as if hypnotized, "Really, why not take a look around? What kind of trick are you trying to pull off?" Sunuo was disdainful and glanced at the sky. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. The blood moon is in the sky. This is sudden. Ga ga ga. A dense swarm of crows suddenly appeared in front of Sunuo and swallowed him up. Sunuo sneered, "You want to trap me with just these crows?" Just as he was about to raise his hand to strike, the crows surrounding him suddenly opened their blood-red eyes one by one. The next moment, Sunuo came to a mysterious space. The whole person was tied to the cross without knowing when, and his limbs were nailed and unable to move. It's as if the magic power all over his body doesn't exist. Is this an illusion? Is there any illusion that can do this? Just as Sunuo was thinking in his mind, a voice echoed. Welcome to the world of Tsukuyomi. Shalo suddenly appeared in front of Sunuo. In this Tsukuyomi space, he was a god. Let me do the math. Technically speaking, you should be the second guest here. As he spoke, Shalo transformed into a long execution knife stained with blood. For the next 72 hours, I will keep stabbing you with a knife. This is no ordinary illusion. The pain endured in this Tsukuyomi space will reflect reality. Well, enjoy it. Whoosh. The execution knife penetrated the abdomen fiercely. Sunuo's pupils suddenly widened, his whole body tightened, and his fists were tightly clenched. Swish, swish, swish. Shalo is like a tireless machine, constantly repeating the work in hand. The white knife goes in, the red knife comes out, and the cycle repeats. Sunuo was sweating profusely at this moment, and for the first time, there was a trace of fear in his heart. What kind of illusion is this? It can actually pull me directly into the illusion space. Even all the illusion magicians he fought against thousands of years ago have never made him feel such pain. Physical power cannot be used, spell power cannot be activated, and even the domain cannot be expanded. The cross behind him seemed like a shackle, restricting all his abilities. The cursed king at this moment is no different from an ordinary person. Shalo couldn't help but sigh. It's true that he is a two-faced Nuo, and he hasn't even hummed a word until now. Such willpower is truly extraordinary. Recalling that when he tortured Master Lezi before, he should have started shouting for mercy by now. Shalo kept moving his hands, looked at Sunuo and joked, "I'll let you go if you ask for mercy." Ha ha ha, do you think such a little trick will make me beg for mercy? Sunuo's face was ferocious and his voice was extremely hoarse. After you get out, I will let you taste my torture. Yes, Shalo smiled disdainfully. There is something more awesome waiting for him after he goes out. Suddenly, Shalo raised his hand and patted his head. The movements of his hands stopped, and he almost ignored a question. This guy Sunuo may have the ability to transfer the damage to Itadori's spirit, or transfer half of the pain he endured to Itadori. If this is the case, if he continues to poke like this, Itadori may not be able to hold on even before Sunuo collapses. After all, in the original work, when he took over Fushiguro Megumi's body, he often asked the unlucky Fushiguro Megumi to take his place and eat Gojo Satoru's infinite space. After 2 rounds of infinite space, Fushiguro Megumi was probably washed away by the spam and turned into a fool. Fortunately, I thought of this and it's not too late. Then, Shalo raised his head, and his right Sharingan eye focused on Sunuo's eyes. Soon, Sunuo's pupils began to dilate and his consciousness gradually blurred. It might be difficult to do this in the outside world, but this is his Tsukuyomi world. Not long after, a soul body was peeled off. Itadori, who was in the soul state, opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. Summer flow. What's going on? Where is this? Also, wasn't it that Sunuo had taken over my consciousness? Suddenly, Itadori looked frightened and stepped back in fright. How come Sunuo was nailed to the cross? Am I not dreaming? Shalo patted Itadori's face, smiled and handed the long knife over. Although it can't help you regain control of your body directly, it can help you relieve the hatred in your heart. I also have the opportunity to stab Sunuo with a knife. Itadori looked down at the long knife in his hand, his tone unbelievable. The hand holding the knife trembled slightly with excitement. He was sentenced to death for his double dealing, and he also used his body to try to hurt his partners many times. This devil who regards human life as nothing. To say that the person Itadori hates the most is the real person first, and the second one is Sunuo who takes over his body. Thinking of this, Itadori held the handle of the knife tightly and stabbed Sunuo suddenly. Shalo on the side found an open space, sat down, and looked at the scene with interest. Instead of letting him torture Sunuo with his own hands, letting Itadori do it obviously made Sunuo even more angry. Fortunately, I thought of this, otherwise I would have accidentally injured one of my own. Not far from the battle between Shalo and Sunuo. Luo who looked at Shalo and Sunuo, who were motionless in the sky, and said with a solemn expression. I didn't expect that the King of Curses would also be tricked. Shalo's illusion is simply outrageous. It even feels that this has exceeded the scope of what the technique can do. No matter how powerful the illusion is, it will never break Master Sunuo's mind. It's just an illusion. Master Sunuo must be very relaxed at the moment, and he should be able to break free soon. Li Mei looked at Sunuo in the sky, her eyes full of admiration, and her tone was extremely proud. In the crusade 1,000 years ago, anyone who took the initiative to use illusions against Sunuo was counterattacked by Master Sunuo's powerful mental power. In the end, you will die, you will go crazy. Okay, let's deal with the two stubborn obstacles in front of us first, otherwise once the illusion is over, there will no longer be such a good opportunity for a sneak attack. Sha Yuji narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Dongtang and Zhongxiang who were blocking the way ahead. Luohu. Hey, Prime Minister Zhang, do you want to be a traitor? Thick smoke billowed out from the Mount Fuji, above Laohu's head, and he looked towards the expansion phase with anger in his eyes. This guy looked like he hadn't woken up ever since he was dealing with Gojo Satoru in the subway station. The attack he launched was even more feeble. It's fine if you didn't help them, but now you're trying to stop them. Prime Minister Zhang snorted coldly and stared at Luohu and others, traitors. You are the deceivers. I will never let anyone dare to hurt my brother. After squatting in isolation at the elevator door for an hour, Zhongxiang finally recognized his own heart. No matter what happened before, Itadori is still his biological brother. And these people actually used Itadori's body as a vessel to summon Sunuo. As a qualified brother, I must save Itadori even if I pay for it with my life. And he only needs to assist the high school specialist and subdue Sunuo, so that Itadori's dominance of consciousness can return. Brother. Lehu looked at Itadori high in the sky, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Itadori is actually your brother. Sha Yuji smiled lightly, as if thinking of his own deeds hundreds of years ago. Then, he looked up at the little witch Nishimiya Momo riding a magic broom in the air. Huh. The senior high school student discovered it pretty quickly. With the signal from Nishinomiya Momo, the final battle in Shibuya officially begins. The new generation of spellcasters hiding in the ruins in the distance began to attack. The location is right below Nishinomiya Momo. After Kamo Ji Shion finished speaking, he decisively drew his bow. As he loosened his fingers on the bow, 3 arrows with magical power shot through the air. Then, the 3 arrows fired quickly turned into a blue rain of arrows in the air, lighting up the entire dark sky. Lying on the roof of the ruins of the Zen temple, Mai held a sniper and had already aimed at the head of Sha Yuji. After holding his breath and concentrating, his slender fingers pulled the trigger at a constant speed. Boom! The recoil made her body shake slightly, and a high-speed rotating bullet pierced the air and burst out. In the plain far away, Sha Yuji first raised his hand to catch the bullet that was shot at his head and crushed it into pieces. Then he squinted his eyes and smiled, looking at the rain of arrows flying in the sky, and he moved around very fast, dodging them all. At this moment, a blue silhouette suddenly flashed across the night. Mai Wenxia lowered her body, her eyes were sharp, and the simple field under her feet covered herself. Draw your sword. Cut. Whoa. A flash of cold light suddenly appeared. But the next second, Milanexia showed a shocked expression. Her unexpected all-out blow was actually caught by the other party with her bare hands. Click. There was a sonorous sound, and the long knife in Sanluxia's hand fell into pieces. How is it possible? In a brief shock, Sha Yuji's big hand had already grabbed him. If this blow hits, the weaker Miwa Kasumi will definitely die. At this time, snapped. A clear and loud clap sounded in the distance. Sanluxia's position was instantly changed and she appeared behind Dongtang and Zhongxiang. Dongtang frowned and scolded. If you are so weak, don't come up and hold us back. But the sword strike just now was very decisive and stronger than the two of them. As he said that, Dongtang looked towards Kamo and Zenuan Mai in the ruins building behind. Miwa Kasumi breathed a sigh of relief, and her expression returned to her original weak and timid appearance. The group attack of the three high school students only lasted for a moment, but it did not have the slightest impact on Sha Yu. Dongtang looked at Sha Yuji, Luohu, and Li Mei across from him with a serious face, and cursed in his heart. Is this bad woman Yuki 99 serious? The strength of these three people is at least special level. How long can they stop them with their own combat power alone? Fortunately, if his unjust game is used properly, it can interfere with the opponent. Sha Yuji patted the dust on his shoulders, changing positions instantly. Not a bad ability. At this time, Lu Hu looked at him deeply. Didn't you say that you were not good at fighting? Judging from the fight just now, Sha Yuji didn't even use any spells during the whole process. He dodged 3 consecutive attacks with ease. Li Mei on the side didn't care at all. In her heart, no technique could compare to Master Su Nuo's slashing attack, including the ice condensation spell she mastered. Sha Yuji smiled. How could I have the heart to lie to you, Hu Bao? What I am good at is indeed not fighting, but... Having said this, Sha Yuji smiled strangely, and his robe and long hair moved automatically without any wind. Jin no Ban. Whirlpool. As his words fell, a huge vortex was summoned behind him. This whirlpool is composed of countless cursed spirits, among which is a rainbow dragon. At this moment, Kensuo finally stopped pretending. Gojo Satoru had been sealed, and he did not continue to hide his strength. This move is the ultimate secret of the magic spell GG Fan mastered by Sha Yuji. Thinking of this, Kensuo couldn't help but sigh. It has to be said that Sha Yuji's talent is powerful. In theory, there is no upper limit to the spell manipulation technique. Haha, when he was alive, he would never have thought that this wonderful technique he developed was similar to Luohu's G-Fan Meteor. But it was improved again by himself. Now this technique can not only extract all the spells of the cursed spirits, but also extract the spells mastered by the cursed spirits for your own use. Perform flexible attacks. Along with the vortex, a beam of light was emitted, hitting everyone in the high school. When Kyonjin launched his attack, a stronger Shinyan slash blocked the attack. Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was Kusakabe who rushed to the battlefield, the panda in a violent state, and the two of them who were blessing the curse with Utahime. Dongtang, we all know the plan. I will try my best to stop them and support them until the arrival of 99 Yuki. But let's make a promise first. If I can't beat you, I will run away. It's impossible to finish your life, not even in this life. Looking at more and more staff from the college arriving, Sha Yuji felt a trace of impatience on his face. Although these people are no threat to him, no one can guarantee whether those special ones will come. Once someone special intervenes, the plan to kill Sha Lu will be shattered. Thinking of this, he sighed and looked at Luohu and Li Mei. Are you two guys going to continue watching the show? A little later, Sha Lu's illusion will end, and he will kill us. Hearing this, Li Mei stood up and looked at Luohu. You can find an opportunity to attack Sha Lu. It's enough to leave the people here to me. Luohu nodded and began to look for opportunities. But who knew that Zhang Shang, who had never taken action, suddenly broke out, and his face was extremely gloomy at the moment. At this moment, he finally recognized the true identity of Sha Yuji. Kamo wheel, you deserve to die. A sudden roar stunned everyone present. Why, Kamo? Everyone in the High Commissioner looked at Kamo Ji Xian who had just arrived. Kamo Ji Hian, who has always been cold and paralyzed, also opened his mouth in surprise and pointed at himself in disbelief. Sha Yuji, closed his eyes and smiled lightly. You finally recognized me, but not entirely right. Kamo Shanlin is just one of my many names. I have also played many roles, both male and female. How is it? It's interesting, isn't it? He didn't care what he said at this moment. He clenched his fists and walked angrily towards Sha Yuji. And with every step he takes, his momentum increases exponentially. You fool, you actually asked me to kill my own relatives. The anger in Zhang Zhang's heart has reached the extreme at this moment. It turns out that all this was Sha Yuji's plan. The bloody massacre, the bad appearance, Itadori, and himself were just pawns that the opponent could use and discard at any time. It can even be said that the death of Shui Tu Badian was planned by him. This caused the elder brother to completely explode. Everything Sha Yuji did was extremely evil and intolerable. Hey, I told you to deal with you idiots, I alone am enough. Li Mei suddenly blocked Zhang Zhang's path and glanced at the High Commissioner with eyes as though they were looking at garbage. Finally, her eyes stayed on the angry Zhang Shang, and she said with great disdain. And you are just a slightly higher level of trash. Without saying a word, the swelling phase began to condense hot blood in front of him. At this moment, he was already blinded by anger. He would kill anyone who dared to stop him from attacking Sha Yuji. The terrifying red blood pressure made everyone present feel fearful. Liu Hu cursed in his heart. This guy was indeed fishing in troubled waters before. He was completely different from when he was at the subway station. If he was willing to show such strength at that time, he would attack Gojo Satoru with all his strength. If you spend time with it, maybe you won't have to die. And Kamo Ji Xian in the rear was completely stunned. Red blood exercise. He will never admit his mistake. Such a terrifying red-blooded oppression. It far exceeds my own. Could it be said that this is the highest level of ancestral art? Does the man in front of me have any connection with the Kamo family? Whoosh. The expansion phase contains an angry attack and begins. A bloody laser that was condensed and compressed to the extreme burst out. Li Mei also felt the huge energy contained in this attack, so he did not dare to be careless and raised his hand to condense several layers of thick ice walls to block it. Boom! The bloody laser was extremely fast, piercing through layers of ice walls, and finally forced Li Mei back a few steps before its power was completely exhausted. Seeing this, the swelling phase did not stop at all, and he clapped his hands suddenly. He actually directly controlled the red blood laser and swept it towards Sha Yuji and the others. Even the three powerful people did not dare to use their bodies to resist Zhang Zhang's crazy attack. Faced with Zhang Zhang's crazy attacks, he could only keep dodging for a while. Boom boom. Wherever the red blood laser swept across, the ground beneath everyone's feet was cut into pieces. Even the unfinished building in the distance was cut in half and collapsed. Seeing this scene, everyone in the high school was also confused. The panda scratched his hair in confusion. Well, this guy shouldn't be from our college, right? Todo, the one I met on the way and said it was Itadori's dearest Ori-chan, now it seems like she really didn't lie. Utahime smiled and said, no matter what, this is a good thing for us. At least his shots restricted the three opponents very well, didn't they? Just stop them from attacking Sha Lu. As for the prison gate area where Wu Jiao Satoru is sealed in Sha Yuji's hands, just leave it to Sha Lu. She always believed in her heart that Sha Lu could win, even if her opponent was Su Nuo. Thinking of this, Utahime couldn't help but look at Sha Lu and Su Nuo, who were frozen in the sky. Suddenly, her beautiful eyes widened and her red lips opened slightly. I saw Sha Lu smiling at her from high in the air, then putting a finger on the corner of his mouth to make a shushing gesture. He actually woke up. Did he mean to stop himself from bluffing? Could it be that he wanted to use himself as bait to deliberately attract the enemy to sneak attack? That's right, although there are only 3 people on the opposite side, they are all real special level ones. If you concentrate on escaping, there is almost no chance of killing. It turns out that all of this is part of Sha Lu's plan. Utahime couldn't help but shudder. What a terrifying guy, not only powerful, but also always able to control the battle situation in his hands. Moreover, the enemy he faced was a double-faced enemy. He actually still has the mind to plot against those 3 special level ones. After thinking about it for a while, Utahime tried to calm down, as if he pretended not to see anything. What we have to do now is to let nature take its course and prevent the other party from seeing anything unusual. If the high school suddenly evacuates, even a fool on the other side will be able to tell that there is a scam. In fact, Shalo had just withdrawn from the Tsukuyomi space, so he happened to discover this situation and took advantage of it. How could Utahime be so outrageous? He handed over the authority of execution to Itadori and is currently stabbing this Sunuo. Sunuo yelled and cursed unpleasantly in Yudu space. Maybe you can't accept that a weakling like Itadori can torture him at will. Zhang Zhang's attack continued, but Li Mei was unwilling to dodge any longer. Trash, do you think anger can make up for the strength gap between us? Li Mei jumped into the air, avoiding the sweep of the red blood ray, and stepped on a piece of broken stone in the air. She sneered, put her hand on the corner of her mouth, and then blew out a breath of cold air. Ice condensation spell. Frost wind. Call. Suddenly, the cold wind howled. Like an overturning tsunami, the pale blue ice crystal swept across the ground at extremely fast speeds, freezing it instantly. The chill was as cold as a dragon, passing over everyone in the high school instantly. Click. In an instant, everyone in the high school was frozen in place by a huge block of ice. Even the flies flying in the low sky and the ants crawling in the cracks in the soil were frozen into ice sculptures at this moment. What? My body can't move. Todo Utime and others, who were just about to launch an attack, widened their eyes in horror. They were all frozen in place, unable to move, and did not dare to make any rash move. Because any struggle may cause the body to fall apart. What a powerful freezing spell. Is this the magician from the heyday 1,000 years ago? When everyone chose to use the magic power to slowly melt the ice, the expansion phase didn't care at all. Although he was frozen in place, his eyes full of reluctance were staring at Sha Yuji. At the same time, he controls the red blood to quickly heat the body surface, endures the severe tearing pain to break the ice, and is the first to free his hands. He had already consumed a lot of energy after fighting Itadori to the death, and the rate of blood production in his body gradually failed to keep up with the consumption. Moreover, after losing his mind just now, he was exhausted by unleashing the red blood technique with all his strength regardless of the consequences. But, so what? For Itadori's safety, it doesn't matter even if it means exhaustion. Li Mei smiled disdainfully, and first activated the reverse curse technique to restore the palm that had been penetrated by blood. The next moment, he arrived in front of Zhang Shang, and his fingers condensed ice thorns and slowly pierced toward Zhang Zhang's eyes. At the same time, the other hand slowly raised. Ice condensation spell, straight waterfall. The pouring ice cubes were as sharp and precise as a blade, heading towards the frozen high school magician's door. However, in the next second, all Li Mei's attacks were shattered, and everyone in the frozen high school regained their freedom. Everyone focuses their attention on the front. As soon as a female voice sounded, sure enough, only by making a rescue can you attract everyone's attention. The only female super magician in the college finally arrived on the battlefield. Juju Yuji tucked her long hair behind her ears and looked at Sha Yuji. Long time no see, Sha Yu. 99 Yuki. Sha Yuji completely put away his playful attitude and looked at the woman who suddenly appeared in front of him with a solemn expression. And the skeletal snake form god surrounding her. Everyone in the high school also cast curious glances at her. It turns out that she is the woman who claims that she may not see her once a year, hangs around abroad all day long, and asks everyone who she likes what she likes. One of the 4 special levels, 99 Yuki. It was indeed very unreliable. Judging from what she said just now, this woman had arrived at the battlefield long ago, but she had not taken action yet. The purpose is to save people, as she said. Seeing this, Kusakabe didn't have much objection. Instead, he shrugged his shoulders, breathed a long sigh of relief, and whispered. Great, the super magician has finally arrived. I shouldn't have much to do next, so I'd better find a quiet alley to fish. The panda grabbed Kusakabe's collar, lifted him up, shook him and yelled. Hey, don't say this in public, everyone can be seen by the conjurer, okay? Kusakabe was unmoved and said with a lackluster expression, but I really want to go home. Dongtang looked at the back of Juju Yuji seriously. It's this woman, my guide, my teacher of enlightenment. But the only thing I want to complain about is that after they tricked him into enrolling in a spell college, he dropped the burden and disappeared. Juju Yuji put his hands on his hips and kept a smile on his face. He first turned his head and said hello to everyone in the high school. Then she was not in a hurry to launch an attack, but continued to look at Sha Yuji. I wanted to continue discussing with you the best and perfect solution on how to eliminate all the cursed spirits in the world. But it's a pity. At this point, Juju Yuji sighed regretfully, because you are no longer the Sha Yuji you were back then. As early as many years ago, the two discussed this issue in the corridor of the high school. This also accelerated Sha Yuji's darkening path in disguise, but Juju Yuji, who started the topic, came up with two answers. The first is to free all mankind from the spell. The second point is to let all human beings become magicians. But now she is more inclined to the first option. Suddenly Juju Yuji's expression changed, as if he had realized something. Could it be that Sha Yuji's darkening back then had something to do with what he said? Probably not. Well, Sha Yuji's betrayal seemed to have happened shortly after the conversation with him. But for her, the sudden trace of self-blame was instantly buried, and instead, something important flashed through her mind. Her face was rare and serious, and she stared at Sha Yuji seriously. Seeing this scene, Dongtang's breath froze and he stood up straight, as if facing a formidable enemy. Coming. Ah, Dongtang, what are you talking about? What's going on? Is she trying to make a bigger move? If that's the case, we'd better run away, retreat. Kusakabe put the sword into its sheath, frowned, and silently retreated behind everyone. The next moment, Juju Yuji took a few steps forward and said, since you have occupied Sha Yuji's body for so many years. So, you should know what kind of woman he likes, right? Speak out and listen, I'll spare your life. This is very important to me, just like collecting stamps at Comic-Con. After saying that, Juju Oil Base looked excited and looked at Sha Yuji with expectant eyes. As soon as these words came out, not only everyone in the high school, but also Luohu and Limei from Sha Yuji's camp were speechless. Isn't it true that none of the special grades in high school are normal? They have investigated the relevant information of several special level students in the high school. Okatsu, who has pure love with a cursed spirit, and Yuki, who always asks everyone who he likes, what kind of woman he likes. And the gambling dog Wang Kinji, who had been expelled a long time ago. So, Sha Lu is the most normal. The corner of Kusakabe's mouth twitched wildly. That's it. I thought she was going to use some big move. Also, Dongtang, please don't suddenly make such an expression as if you were facing a powerful enemy. The moment he received the order from his superiors to join the Shibuya battlefield, Kusakabe made up his mind. As long as you scratch a little bit of skin, you will leave Shibuya immediately. Nothing is more important than his personal safety. At the same time, Mai and others from Zenyuan who were in the same class as Dongtang seemed to understand the reason for all this. It turns out that I learned this saying from her when I meet someone in the East Hall and ask them what type of woman they like. Sha Yuji shook his head. Unfortunately, I hollowed out everything inside this body, including his brain. So, I can't answer your question. But when his memory was completely erased, almost all of it was memories of Gojo Satoru, and there were very few memories of women. After saying that, Sha Yuji glanced at Luohu, who also understood and quietly looked at Sha Lu, who had his eyes closed in the sky. Really, it's such a pity. Then I'll have to kill you. 99 Yuki was a little disappointed, and just when he was about to activate the technique, there was an explosion, and Luohu bypassed everyone's field of vision at some point and headed towards the summer stream in the sky. What? When is this? Tisk. I didn't expect that the most cunning thing would be this volcano head. Seeing this, Juju Yuki had no choice but to give up on developing the technique and instead aimed at the leaky coral. Then, the Shikigami surrounding her actively curled up into a ball and kicked in the direction of the leak. Liuhu flew across the block at high speed and jumped up to the top of the tall building. The corner of its mouth raised a smile that was about to succeed, and a blazing flame condensed in its hands. His figure flashed and he came to Sha Lu's side instantly. Hum, I finally got a chance. Although it was a sneak attack, there was nothing I could do about it. Who told you to be too strong? I will avenge the real man and Tuo Gen. As for the attacks from the 99 Yuki behind him, there was no need for him to worry. When, sure enough, a mirror-shaped curse spirit appeared behind Lehu, deflecting Juju Yuki's attack. At the same time, Limai activated the ice condensation spell again. But this time, her target is just one person from Dongtang who can teleport people instantly. Seeing this scene, everyone in the high school secretly said, "Oh no." Once Shalo is attacked by surprise, it means that his spell will be interrupted and Sunuo will break free. By then, Shalo will be seriously injured or even killed. Who else can stop Liang Mi and Sunuo? Toto kept dodging the freezing attacks and had no chance to clap his hands to activate the technique Injustice game. Only Utahime breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but smile. I finally got fooled. High in the sky, Luahu had flames attached to his hands, and when he aimed at Shaliu, he struck out with a black tiger to dig out his heart. If this move hits, and Shalu is unprepared, he will definitely die. However, the next second, Shalu suddenly opened his eyes and instantly grabbed Luohu's neck. "It's easy to take care of you." Boom. With great force, a whip kick landed solidly on Luohu's face, twisting his whole face and making his saliva fly. After Luohu fell heavily to the ground, like a gourd rolling on the ground, it rolled all the way to Sha Yuji's feet and barely stopped. Luohu covered her swollen face and stared at the sky with wide eyes in disbelief. I saw Shalu moving his neck and looking down with a smile on his face. How is it possible? When did he wake up? Moreover, Sunuo has not yet awakened, which means that he has not cancelled the illusion. Could it be that I thought wrong from the beginning, and as a caster, his actions are not affected? In other words, Shalu is always awake. This cunning guy has been pretending. Leahu is just impatient and irritable, but that does not mean it is a fool. After thinking about it for a while, I quickly understood all this. Sha Yuji shook his head helplessly. He knew that the plan to attack Shalu had failed, but Sunuo still didn't wake up. Obviously, 15 Jisu Nuo wanted to kill Shalu, but it was not enough. Haha, Sha Yuji laughed at himself and looked at the prison gate in his hand. Gojo Satoru, it seems you were right. Without you, he is indeed the strongest in the contemporary era. But, do you think this is all my 1,000-year plan? Thinking of this, Sha Yuji glanced at everyone in the high school and showed an extremely ferocious smile. It seems that the Millennium Plan will be forced to start in advance. As he spoke, he squatted down and put his hands on the ground. As an old monster who has lived for thousands of years, long before the Shibuya incident happened, he had prepared for the worst. At the cost of providing thousands of artificial curse spirits, he obtained a ray of soul of a real person, thus mastering inaction transformation. Inaction transforms, opens. As his words fell, the palms attached to the ground emitted light. In just a moment, a formation with a huge range suddenly appeared under his feet. As the purple light lit up, the obscure and mysterious runes on the ground also lit up. Everyone felt an ominous atmosphere and looked up to the sky. Thunder and lightning flashed in the dark sky, and a formation composed of runes enveloped the entire earth. An ancient and long ominous bell echoed throughout Shibuya. Immediately afterwards, the dark breath of the curse filled the entire earth, and countless overlapping screams seemed to pierce everyone's eardrums. Countless cursed spirits that have been dormant for thousands of years emerge from the ground, and they will hunt humans unscrupulously. Ordinary people will face the crisis of extinction. All over the Neon Country, people screamed endlessly. After doing all this, Kensuo tore off the tender veil that belonged exclusively to Sha Yuji. What replaced them were just those ferocious eyes that revealed endless evil. Okay, Pandora's box has been opened. The cursed spirits bound by me thousands of years ago have been released. Thousands of curse masters who signed a contract with me thousands of years ago will also wake up. They will overturn the entire world. At the same time, a black door appeared behind him, and Sha Yuji through the prison door to 99 Yuji. If I want Gojo to realize it, I invite you to participate in the greatest game in history. As for the name of this game, I call it Return of Death. Finally, Sha Yuji took a deep look at Shalu, then narrowed his eyes at the sleeping Sunuo, and said bluntly, "With the strength of 15 fingers, you can't kill Shalu, let alone defeat Gojo Satoru. If you figure it out, we can cooperate. I believe you can hear it, Sunuo. Finally, I declare that the peaceful era of the heyday of magic has come again. After leaving an evil smile, he disappeared into the endless darkness. At this moment, everyone in the high school fell into deep thought. Will the heyday of the magic world come again? Also, what is the greatest game in history, Death Resurrection? Juju Yuji looked solemn. It seems that the situation is not good. As a top-level conjurer, she can vaguely feel that the world of conjuration has undergone earth-shaking changes. What is the identity of the person who occupies Shayuyuji's body? He can actually do this to such an extent. Shalo returned to the ground thoughtfully. Just from the air, you can see that Shibuya is now almost completely occupied by cursed spirits. Although it was clear that Kensuo had not swallowed the real person, he still activated the technique. If I remember correctly, following Kensuo's operation, many powerful magicians will appear. He naturally understands the return of death and destruction. Okatsu worries about Teizendai and wears 4. He kills Botu Shungjinchi and fights against the strongest man 400 years ago, Lu Ziyan. Then came the battle between the high school and Sunuo, and the gourd babies saved Grandpa and sent them off one by one. Careful, while Shalu was meditating, Luhu and Li Mei suddenly launched an attack. The frost and ice curtain blocked Shalu's retreat, and Luahu summoned flames to burn towards Shalu. Seeing this, Shalu didn't panic at all, and activated the divine power. The two men's indiscriminate attacks passed through Shalu's body without causing any impact. When the smoke and dust dissipated, an extremely terrifying curse instantly spread out and swept over everyone present. Shalu frowned slightly and saw Li Mei kneeling respectfully on one knee, looking at Sunuo with great piety. It turns out that they were just attacking in detail, and their real purpose was to wake up Sunuo. Without the Tsukuyomi space that you control personally, you will naturally be easily influenced by the outside world. Hey, wake up, how does it feel? Shalu didn't care at all about the angry Sunuo, but joked. But one thing is certain, Sunuo is so angry, I think Tsukuyomi has made him suffer a lot. It's just that his willpower was too strong and he just forced himself to hold on. Sunuo touched Li Mei's head, causing the latter to squint her eyes and look like she was enjoying herself. Luahu opened his mouth. He couldn't have imagined that after being touched twice by Sunuo, the mushroom head with a cold face before turned into a kitten that pleases its owner. Li Mei, thousands of years have passed, but I do miss your cooking skills. Li Mei's face turned red and she was extremely excited. It is an honor for me to receive your praise. Well, for thousands of years, you have been the most loyal. Wait until I chop him into minced meat and taste your cooking skills. After saying that, Sunuo looked firmly at Shalu. If looks could kill, Shalu would have died hundreds of times. Your illusions opened my eyes. If you were here 1,000 years ago, I might not have killed all those magicians so easily. But that's all. To me, those pains are just an itch. Shalu looked at Sunuo with contempt. You have the guts to open your eyes and speak. Or maybe, the majestic king of curses can also get sand in his eyes. Didn't it mean that Tsukuyomi was just tickling for him? Then what does it mean if you close all 4 eyes? When you stay in Nuo, are there times when you follow your heart? PFF'd. Ha ha ha. Hearing Shalu's teasing, Juju Yuji couldn't help laughing. This Shalu is quite irritating. If you look carefully, Sunuo's face will turn purple with anger. What an interesting guy, be sure to ask him what kind of woman he likes afterwards. Lord Sunuo, please don't fall for his aggressive tactics. Luohu, who was kneeling on one knee, was afraid that Sunuo would come up and really open his eyes. If Shalu comes up with another illusion, wouldn't the warning it just made be in vain? Yes, sir, this guy will only use these heresy to restrict you. Rigan agreed. Sunuo shook his head. Although he was arrogant than anyone else, he had to admit that his illusion skills were powerful. And after several fights, I also realized that Shalu was not simple. Now he has not yet regained his full strength, but he can no longer underestimate him as before. Thinking of this, Sunuo grinned and spread his aura. For a moment, the cursed spirits wandering in every corner of Shibuya seemed to be summoned, and they roared and rushed towards Shalu. You two, go and consume his spell power together. Su Nuo believed that Shalo had continuously released super standard spells before. In addition, the illusion just now must have consumed a lot of his energy. If you want to kill Shalo steadily, you must further consume him. Brother Shalo, just go ahead and fight Su Nuo and leave the rest of the trouble to us. Juju Yuji gave Shalo a wink. Shalo shook his head and glanced at Utime, who was aside. Utahime, who understands Shalo, naturally understands it instantly. She looked at 99 Yuki. Ahem. Well, Senior Yuki, we'd better retreat farther away, otherwise we will be affected. Moreover, since we are here, Shalo may not be able to exert his full strength. Juju Yuji looked at the cursed spirits coming from all around, frowning in confusion. I am also a super-level magician after all. Will I also be affected? Although the fight between Shalo and Su Nuo must be very powerful, she should not be able to block the aftermath as she is a super-level person, right? The most important thing is that she didn't seem to do anything when she rushed to the battlefield this time. It's okay to let her hold down the volcanic head and Li Mei, but we can't really use her as a soy sauce. Todo advised. Sister, listen to teacher Utahime. He vaguely remembered the super-large Rasengan that Shalo made at the sister exchange meeting. That range, that damage. It's better to stay away. In order to prevent Shalo from having any worries, I will take the first step. Kusakabe nodded repeatedly, turned around and left without any hesitation. He can no longer intervene in a battle of this level. Should he stay and be cannon fodder? 99 Yuji sighed. Well, let's retreat 500 meters in succession. 500 meters is the limit distance that I can provide instant support. If Shalo has an accident, I can take action. Soon, everyone in the High Commissioner evacuated to the ruined neighborhood 500 meters away. Juju Yuji was on the top of the building, looking at the direction of Shalo, and said somewhat disappointedly. Did you retreat too far? You won't even be able to see the aftermath of the battle. She also wanted to see the duel between Shalo and Su Nuo. I do think this position is a bit dangerous. Looking back, I saw Mei Mei and others arriving with others. Juju Yuji raised his eyebrows. Is it dangerous to be so far away? Can that guy even level the entire Shibuya? Looking at the silent battlefield in the distance, she felt a little impatient. Although she had produced powerful spell spirits abroad, she still had no pressure. As a berserker, she was naturally itchy and wanted to fight Su Nuo. See how powerful the rumored king of the curse really is. Also, no matter how large the range of Shalo's magic technique is, can it be as large as hers? Only a handful of people in high schools understand her technique, which is called Wrath of the Stars. Able to give oneself imaginary quality. If she wanted to, she could even summon a black hole. Therefore, strictly speaking, no one in the world of magic can have a greater range of power than her. Suddenly remembering something, she threw the prison gate in her hand to Nanami. In the image, he seems to be the more reliable one. For a time, all the people's eyes were attracted to prison gate. Is this the prison gate that even Gojogo Sensei can seal? She looks so ugly, with dense eyes, a nightmare of trypophobia. The curious baby Kizuki Wild Rose took out the hammer and knocked it lightly a few times, making a crisp metal collision sound. The rest of the people put their ears close to try to hear the sounds inside. Well, if Gojo Satoru hadn't been sealed, wouldn't I still have had to come all the way from abroad? Having said this, Juju Yuji wondered, the other party would actually take the initiative to hand over the prison gate territory to us. Is it related to the subsequent method of unlocking the seal? Forget it, I have to apologize to that guy Gojo Satoru and stay in there for a while. The most important thing now is Su Nuo. At this moment, Kusakabe suddenly noticed something. Have you ever felt the earth tremble? It seems, is it? Distant battlefield. Luahu and Limai looked at Shiryu and said proudly. Use whatever moves you have, otherwise you will never have a chance again when Master Su Nuo recovers. Looking at the group of cursed spirits rushing towards him crazily, Shalu's eyes flashed with excitement. He looked at Su Nuo and the others, his left eye turned purple, and he grinned, then let me show you the power of the Samsara Eye. After saying that, he bowed slightly, kicked off the ground suddenly, and grabbed the air on both sides with his hands. Earth explosion star. Boom. The ground suddenly trembled violently. At this moment, tall buildings, cars, blocks of earth, and even subway stations built underground were uprooted. They seemed to be affected by some mysterious power and gathered in the air, and soon formed a huge earth. The surrounding cars were squealing because of the violent shaking. The ground beneath Limai's feet gradually collapsed, forcing the two of them to retreat. Rimai, the power of the Rinnegan. What kind of unseen technique is this? Looking at the huge sphere condensed in the sky that covered the sky and the sun, Luhu was completely dumbfounded. Is this a meteorite? If this thing were to be smashed down, I would probably meet Yu and the others again immediately. The group of cursed spirits under the meteorite also showed their inner fear and wanted to escape in all directions. Li Mei, we can't intervene for the time being. Let's evacuate first. Luahu shouted towards Limai behind him. Li Mei nodded blankly, and she also planned to escape temporarily. Only by keeping herself safe can she better contribute to Lord Su Nuo. Just as the two started to leave, a figure flashed past, and a pair of big hands suddenly pressed their shoulders. The two of them were shocked and their eyes widened. Okay, so fast. When did he? Shalo moved his hands slightly hard, playing with the taste. Before I clap my hands, you can't go anywhere, or I will burn you with black flames. As he said that, Shalo randomly found an unlucky cursed spirit, and then his eyes narrowed. Raging, the black flames of Amaterasu swallowed it up in an instant. After several screams, the ground became pitch black, not even the residue was left. For a moment, all the cursed spirits present were stagnant in breathing and did not dare to move at all. Especially Lehuhu was so scared that she broke into a cold sweat. He knows the power of this black flame very well. Even if he is burned, if he doesn't stop it decisively, the end will be the same. Then Shalo slowly raised his head, looked at Su Nuo who still looked proud in the sky, and said with a smile. The escape game is about to begin. After saying that, he clapped his hands lightly. Snapped. The meteorite seemed to have received the order and was falling rapidly. And Luahu Limai and others also ran away the moment Shalo clapped his hands. In the distance, everyone in the high school looked up at the huge meteorite that started to fall in the sky. Kusakabe swallowed and stammered, "Are you kidding me? For those cursed spirits, what is the difference between such a terrifying attack and an elephant dancing on the head of an ant? The most important thing is, it might affect us. Can you control the range of the spell a little?" Kusakabe felt that his heart had been greatly shocked. Juju Yuji looked at the huge meteorite in the sky and said curiously. What kind of magic is this? It can even uproot the earth. These meteorites are completely composed of a large number of buildings, cars, and soil blocks mixed and compressed. You really didn't lie to me. All of this guy's spells are beyond the standard. Shalo's first move has been made, now it's up to Su Nuo to take the move. At this moment, 99 Yuki is extremely excited, this time is not in vain. To be able to watch such a shocking battle. Su Nuo was in the air, looking at the huge meteorite falling at a rapid speed, spreading his hands and sighing. Ah, it's really not that simple. I admit that you are strong, but... Su Nuo grinned, formed seals with his hands, and made a low magnetic voice. The realm unfolds. The demon suppressing chef. As a low and hoarse voice fell. A large scarlet Buddhist shrine rises from the ground. It let out a scream and wail that echoed like a demon from hell. A canvas from hell seems to appear in the sky. With Su Nuo as the center, the domain instantly spread out, covering the meteorites in the sky. Kill me. As Su Nuo's voice fell, the Buddhist niche opened its huge abyss mouth, and countless slashes shot out from inside. Swish, swish, swish. The invisible slashes cut the meteorite crazily. In the sky, chopped stones continued to fall. Naturally, Shalo would not let Su Nuo kill him so easily. He raised his hands and said, "All things are led by heaven." A train rushed towards Su Nuo. Exactly. Su Nuo smiled disdainfully and raised his hand to face the oncoming train. 8. Whoosh. Countless slashes swept through it, and the train was like paper, instantly cut into countless neat and smooth mango dices. Shalo raised his eyebrows and controlled several buildings to throw them towards Su Nuo. But they were all easily chopped into pieces by Su Nuo. But his goal has been achieved. The vortex appeared, and Shalo disappeared instantly, leaving the range covered by the meteorite. He didn't want to be hit by the attack he summoned. Sunuo stayed where he was and stared at it for a moment. Suddenly, a huge shadow enveloped him. When I looked up, the meteorite actually accelerated and came right up to my face. Tisk, what a cunning guy. He can actually speed up the falling speed of meteorites. Come, not only was Sunuo not afraid, but he showed a ferocious look on his face, and his attacks became more ferocious. Boom! The huge meteorite fell suddenly, and the surrounding buildings were instantly blown away by the huge impact. Accompanied by the screams of the cursed spirits who failed to escape from the meteorite, the area hit by the meteorite was instantly flattened. One of Luahu and Limai supported their knees, while the other simply fell to the ground, panting like crazy. Madman! Shalo, this madman! Master Sunuo seemed to have not escaped from the range of the meteorite. Could it be that he? No, you will win. Limai looked firmly at Sunuo's position. Suddenly, a low and indifferent voice echoed in everyone's ears. Untie. Whoosh! A huge slash shot straight into the sky, and actually cut the entire meteorite in half. Even the clouds and the sky were split into two. Sunuo's top was almost completely torn, revealing the upper body full of curse lines. Seeing this scene, Limai stood up excitedly, as if he had forgotten the fatigue on his body. I knew it. How could Lord Sunuo be defeated by this mere meteorite? In the distance, everyone in the high school could not help but be shocked by this. Cut in half. How could such a huge meteorite be cut open by Sunuo with just one blow? Even the clouds and the sky were combed and divided. What a monster! But Shalo could still fight such a monster back and forth. Juju Yuji's eyes were burning and he sighed. As expected of Liang Mi and Sunuo, the cursed king from thousands of years ago, he actually accepted this attack forcefully. I'm really looking forward to the next battle. At this moment, Kusakabe suddenly staggered back 2 steps and shouted, "Look at the sky." Everyone followed his gaze. I saw a figure rising slowly into the sky, its robes rustling in the wind. Shalo looked down, and the entire Shibuya fell into his field of vision, with cursed spirits wandering around every corner. Sunuo and others below have become tiny ants. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Curse power, natural disasters, and Sunuo are all gathered here. Shalo took a deep breath, opened his arms, and looked down. Under Sunuo's control, the cursed spirits once again forgot their fear and piled up together, like irrational zombies, opening their bloody mouths towards him. Sunuo, on the other hand, returned to his own domain and quietly restored his magic power. The opening of the domain, coupled with the full strength removal that he had just used to cut open the meteorite, also consumed a lot of mantra power. This was also the reason why he was not in a hurry to take action. But what made him feel depressed was why Shalo often used large-scale spells, but the power of the spell was not exhausted. It was as if the magic power in his body was infinite. No, this is impossible. He must be just like me, pretending to be relaxed on the surface. Luohu and Limai continued to attack Shalo in the sky. Flames and ice spikes kept attacking towards the summer current in the air. But all this is in vain in the face of the illusion of divine power. Looking at the Shalo slowly rising into the sky, Luohu had a bad feeling in her heart. This is the intuition of being a natural disaster. Limai's eyes were gloomy. Tisk. What does this guy want to do if he suddenly stops fighting? Do you think you can get away with it once and for all by flying to the sky again? Although his weird state can allow any attack to pass through, it will definitely continue to consume his magic power. What's the point of doing this besides constantly consuming the magic power? However, the next moment, a voice sounded. How many floors does a bag of rice have to carry? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.